Technical issues. Howdy. Welcome back to Dion Talk. My computer is not playing along well today. This is going to be a live stream I do on Tuesdays, which will last as long as the questions do. And my goal is to answer all of your questions. So I'm going to cover a topic at the beginning to give you some time to get your questions into the comments. I really want to cover something that I'm kind of understanding now that I've been retired for about a month. If this is your first time to my channel, my name is Dion. I retired at 52. Took about 8 years to reach financial independence. I worked 4 more years to make sure I had reached financial freedom. And if you want to know the difference, let me know in a question in the comments and I'll cover that. But in this month, I've started to realize that it is possible to multiply your time. And if you listen to a lot of people, they say everybody has the same 24 hours, except some people who grow a business or a system so that they start getting money from someone else's time. But for you to have your time, like your living lifetime, there's a way to multiply how much of that you get. And the point of this is financial freedom can actually help you multiply your time. It is true. We all have the same 24 hours. But when you're sleeping, is that your time? When you're working for the money to pay your bills, is that your time? And some people are lucky. They get a job that they really like. I worked the last 13 years at a truck driving school where I really liked the job. I got to play in semis like they were a go-kart. I got to use simulators and develop curriculum for students. I got to help people find great local jobs. Like I was always dealing with people who were trying to improve their life. So to me, it was a great job. But when I was at work, and I'm going to run the numbers on this multiplying your time as though we all work 40 hours a week. Do any of you actually work only 40 hours a week? I don't know that. I can probably count on my hand how many times in the last 30 years that I've only worked 40 hours in a week. I've worked 50 to 60 for the last 13 at this company. Especially when we're on the path to financial freedom, we're either working on our side hustle or we're working overtime. So when we're working for someone else, is that your time? And then, what do you call me time? I've got some friends who let their kids take a day off of school if they want like a mental health day. Or your weekends. People say, thank God it's Friday and no crap, tomorrow's Monday. Like there are people who design their lives where they hate their job, so they live for the weekends. So the weekends are your time. One of those days is probably spent catching up on sleep and rest, right? As you're not actually doing things. But your time can actually include things like doing things with your family. Right? I have a friend, and I don't want to call him out because I've been picking on him too much lately, but I'm trying to get him to retire early. He's definitely beyond financially free, and one of his goals is to spend time with his kids. So that time with your kids, that's your me time in his case. I think me and my kids, if we spent too much time together, would probably kill each other. So I like to see them. I don't want more me time with them. If your kids want to stay with you after they're 18, I think you failed as a parent. So what is your you time? Is it reading a book? And that's something I love to do. I'm an avid reader. I love to read. But while working, who has the time to read? So I switched to Audible. We have a commute. So now commuting becomes listening to a book or a podcast. Is your you time exercising? Is it hiking? Is it camping? Whatever is the thing that you like to do that isn't generating money so that you can save for the future, so that you can reach financial freedom, so that you can generally work really hard to make someone else more money because you're their employee. How much time is yours? So if you take the same 24 hours in a day, that's 168 hours in a week. So in an average week, we're going to take out 40 hours for working. Most of us are working a lot more than 40. But some are working 32. So we'll average it at 40. And let's say you have a 30-minute drive each way. Some people commute a lot longer. I lived in a town where the commute was over an hour one way. So it was 2 hours a day. But we're going to say 30 minutes a day, giving you an hour each day. So 40 for work, 5 for commuting, 8 for sleeping. We're talking about taking out most of your life that could possibly even be your you time for the average person. So it's hard to because you have weekends. And some people take a week's vacation. So let's break it down by the day. We all do have the same 24 hours. We haven't figured out how to change that. So we take out 8 hours for sleeping, 8 hours for working. And we're going to treat weekends are the same whether you're financially free or you're working. So we're just talking about a Monday through Friday day. So you lose 8 hours for sleeping, 8 hours for working. Some people work more overtime. Some people sleep a little less. So we're going with averages here. Hour for commuting. And so you're going to take 17 hours out of 24, right? That leaves you with, Matt, do the math for me, 7 hours. That could be your you time. If you didn't have to cook, you didn't have to shop, you didn't have to shower, you didn't have to, some people, that's their you time. Wrong channel. So without even taking out all of those things, let's take out an average. Shopping, cooking, cleaning, laundry, we'll take out 2 hours. So you have 5 hours in an average day where most people grab the remote, watch some TV, pass out. Like that's the evening for a weeknight, unless you have kids. And I don't know anybody who would have kids, younger kids when they're like over 40, unless you're the lumberjack. And now imagine being in your 40s, having the energy to take care of kids, spend time with them, like actual quality time with them. And doing an adult's laundry is like 2 loads a week. When you have kids, and I haven't had 3 kids, right? My kids are older now, but when they were younger, there are so many outfits, and tiny people clothes are harder to fold than big people clothes. So laundry was like this never ending task, right? So that 5 hours of yours every day while you're working, just an average job, not developing a side hustle, not working on financial independence, the average person is getting those five hours. So about a month ago, I reached financial freedom in my head, finally flipped the switch, and retired from the W-2. So I got back my 50 to 60 hours a week plus the commute, which let's say 40, like the average person. I no longer have to commute. I no longer have to work that many hours. I'm getting back 9 hours a day. So 8 hours of work plus the hour of commute, which we all know is more because of the overtime, but I'm just saying average. I had 5 hours. Now I have 14 on an average day, 14 hours to go. What? I used to say to all my married friends, if this really sucks being single because all I do is whatever I want all the time. And now I get to say to all my friends who are working, this being retired sucks. All I do is whatever I want every day. And now I'm realizing it's 14 hours a day instead of 5. And those 5, you're wiped out from an 8-hour plus day at work. Imagine you have 14 now where you're like, oh man, it's like 10 in the morning. I better send Matt this picture of the slick pink panther because I have had nothing else to do this morning. Then you get to do whatever you want. And Michael Zuber says every day is Saturday, and I have the cup to show it, which I don't have with me today. Because the dishes and laundry are still there even when you're retired. It's very sad. You hire a maid. But every night is Friday night. Some spicy water. You don't have to think of this for the rest of your life. I never have to go to bed early unless I go out of my way to schedule something early the next day. Something I want to do. Because imagine your alarm goes off at 5 o'clock in the morning to go to work. You are last second, delayed, trying to figure out, is it worth the energy to even make food or some coffee or whatever before work today? Or do I sleep in this an extra 15 minutes? Or I'm about to leave on a trip. My alarm's probably going to go off in a couple of hours because it's going to be 5 and I'm excited to go on my trip. So I'm already up and ready to go. Like the difference is huge. 14 hours a day that is yours with all of the energy that comes with that versus 5. Yes, it takes time to get there. The first 5 years on the path to financial freedom, almost no matter what path you take, feels like it takes forever and things happen slow. The first 2 years, all I did was saved for a duplex while I lived in an apartment and rented out my house. 2 years to buy one place. So I'm not 80 units in 2 years or anything like that. So the next 2 years, while house hacking a duplex, all I did was buy one more duplex. 4 years, two properties. The first 5 years are really slow. The next 5 years, it was a little harder to keep up with. And the money starts to pile up after the income snowball kicks in and you start having money come in from different sources, more cash flowing assets. And I reached financial independence in 8 years. I worked for 4 more, partly because I love the job and I needed to get the company set up so that I can take myself out of the company without really hurting the company, the employees, and the owners that I had worked with. And which reminds me, there was a couple of comments made this week, and we're going to do a video with the three amigos on Thursday, where somebody made the comment of, it makes total sense that you and Matt the Lumberjack Landlord and Michael Zuber, with six-figure incomes, were able to reach financial freedom. And you're right. Once we got there, we didn't start investing. I didn't start investing. My first 2 years while I was saving for that first duplex I was making started at $17 an hour. I started to make a little bit more. I don't know in the first 5 years that I got above $23 an hour at 5 years once I started being like the company president, and it grew from there. But I was able to get a six-figure income because I was on the path to financial freedom. I was working on making it to where I didn't need a job. And that's why I was actually able to get a job that paid so much, which in the last 4 years did. But before that, I wasn't making six figures for the first 8 years of investing. I had an idea that would grow the company I was working at. But if I needed the single parent with 3 kids, and if I absolutely had to have that income to pay the bills, have food, keep the house, I would have kept my head down, kept my mouth shut, and just done my job. But I had realized if I bought a rental every 2 years and didn't even think of the income snowball yet, and I figured in 10 years I'd have five cash flowing rentals, the cash flow I was seeing, and house hacking with no expenses, work would be completely optional in 10 years. Income snowball made it happen a bit faster, so it happened in 8 years, and with even less rentals than I was expecting to need at the time. Since I knew I didn't need the job, I went to the new owners when they purchased the company I was working at and presented my idea. And they actually said, that's a great idea. We'll run with it. I'll tell you what, we'll give you a chance. If it works, in 6 months, you'll run the place. If it doesn't work, in 6 months, you're fired and someone else will run the place. And it was the best chance anybody had ever given me, right? That's why I wanted to take those extra 4 years to make sure the company was set up to not really suffer when I left. My idea worked, but I never would have taken the risk. Starting at $17 an hour, I never would have taken the risk of losing the job because I had 3 kids to take care of. But I was on the path to financial freedom, so I could take that risk at work, which eventually led to the six-figure income. So I want to talk about one more thing, and then I'll get to the questions. And I'm hoping that there's a lot of questions tonight because I would like this live stream to go on at about 3 hours, if possible. And someday, I am going to learn how to take this data out from YouTube and put it into podcast, but not today. I probably need somebody to help walk me through that. I want to talk about the 3 stages of, I want to call it life, but it's retirement life. You have go years where you're still young enough to enjoy things, to hike, to try new things, to where it doesn't hurt to get out of bed every day. You have your go slow years when you're old enough to where you don't have the energy, you can get hurt a lot easier. And then you have your no-go years. Your no-go is when you're at such an age where you're really not going to travel. You're probably in assisted living. And some people say, I wouldn't want to be in assisted living. I want to live with family. And I saw how my kids took care of every pet. No thanks. Put me in a home. I want a pro taking care of me. So if the average person is supposed to retire at 65, and the average life expectancy in the United States, sorry, that's where I live. I want to travel all over the world, but I don't yet live all over the world. The life expectancy in the United States actually went down 2 years, two years of life expectancy. Before 2019, it was 78.8 years. After 2020, the life expectancy in the United States, because of everything that's happening, is 76.6 years. So if you retire at 65, you have 11.6 years of retirement for the average life expectancy. Yes, 12% of the people die before 65, but that's the median. The medium, half the people will make it past 60, 76, and it's a bell curve, right? So you have the potential for an average of 11 years in what I would consider your go slow years. At 65, I get it. There are some super active people in their 60s, but most people in their 60s aren't taking, if they go on a cruise, they sit on the boat. They probably don't take the excursions. If you're traveling around the world, you're looking for places where you can not do a lot of stuff. Your go fast years, I think, are before 65. And when you're in your 30s, you think that's your only go fast years, but when you're in your 40s and 50s, you're still active, you're still doing things. If you can retire before 65, if you can make work optional and have that option to say, even though I like my job, if you hate your job, quit. But even if you like your job, time freedom, tripling your life, taking that 5 hours a day, turning it into 14 hours a day by eliminating the need for the W-2 job, can turn your go years from 10 or 11 into 20 or 30, where you actually multiply the amount of life that you get to have that's yours or your family's instead of an employer's. I'm not saying employers suck. It took an employer, it took a company to work at for me to get on the path to financial freedom. But there are so many people that aren't on the path to financial freedom. They're on the path to retirement at the regular age because they don't know there's another option. That's my goal, is to say there are other options. So let me go up here and get to the howdies and the questions. Dividend Dave, howdy. You get a prize for being first. When you come by, Dave, we'll do a shot from my tiny little flask of you were first. So let me know the next time you're in the area. I know I wasn't available last time. Million, howdy. What is the risk on a 30-year fixed rate mortgage if properties are cash flowing 8 to 10% cash on cash, assuming 20% down payment, reserve and vacancy of 15%? Here's the risk. What is the risk on a 30-year fixed rate mortgage if properties are cash flowing? What is the risk? I think I'm missing a part of the question where you create a risk. So there are some risks if you buy. So that's kind of the math. You're focused million on the math of 30-year fixed rate mortgage. So there is no risk of the mortgage changing. You don't have adjustable rate. It sounds like it's not a DSCR loan or an NOI based loan where they're going to look at the property to see if it's still performing in 7 or 10 years to see if you can continue or need to refinance like a commercial loan, which is why I stay with 4 units or less for residential lending. What is the risk? And I'm not sure I understand the question. A lot of people would think the risk is, well, property values could crash, which would have no impact on you whatsoever because property values don't impact rents. And historically, since 1914, when we started tracking the data, rents have never gone down market wide. So the risk you could have is if you're in a market where there's only 1 or 2 economic drivers. If you're in a small town in the middle of nowhere, like Rosamond, California, and Edwards Air Force Base shuts down, you still have some commuters to LA County. But if there's only 1 or 2 economic drivers in an area, you can be severely impacted. Or if all of the car manufacturers move away from Detroit, rents can tank. So I like to invest in a place where there's several economic drivers. And I always name the ones around me, but there's probably different ones around you. I'm in the Pacific Northwest where we have a base, a port, colleges, hospitals, Boeing, Amazon, Costco headquarters. Like there's Microsoft. There's all these economic drivers that several things would have to happen for rents to be impacted because while market wide, they have never gone down. In 2009, Class A markets went down enough to make it look like there was a dip in rent, but rents have never actually gone down in Class C or B areas. Blame inflation, not the strength of rents. And now we have this housing shortage. So I don't see a risk with doing that with 30-year fixed rate debt. But if they're cash flowing 8 to 10%, and that's first year, they're going to get better because rents tend to go up. They have flatlined sometimes, but they've never actually gone down market wide. Bill, howdy. Laura, howdy. Good evening. You're on the East Coast. Dawn, howdy. Group, I liked the pause for technical issues because even though I always jump on the second feed isn't available, you're always already speaking. Try Zuber's method. I do the this to one and then go, but I think I need to wait longer. What I've learned about lives, Dawn, recently from doing the lives on the slides is I go and then I kind of watch to see, because if I have a video where there's like something in the background that I shouldn't have in the video, I have to take the video down. Um, when I watch it right away, the first 10 to 20 seconds aren't there, and the last 10 to 20 seconds aren't there. But then about 3 hours later, something in YouTube world happens and it catches the beginning and the end of the videos. So I think that's happening with this too. Clinton, howdy. Trucking landlord, great name. 65 probably. Yeah. Lumberjack landlord, howdy, Matt. It's not your time when you're working for someone else. I know, I'm retired. Insert Pink Panther here. Exactly. If I was doing Zoom, I'd have the background up for you. CBW, howdy. What do you recommend for someone that lives in an expensive area and no properties cash flow like the Bay Area, like Michael Zuber? The first thing that comes to mind when people talk about living in an expensive area, I will reference a friend of mine, Millennial Mike. He actually owns a duplex in Seattle, which I would consider an expensive area. They had over 30% appreciation last year. Most properties there aren't going to cash flow. Single family houses in my area do not cash flow. They're all negative returns. I've not ever seen a single family that you could purchase and then cash flow on, even a pretty old one, without doing something like the Burr method, the massive rehab. And even then, prices just don't line up with rents. But small multifamily work. Millennial Mike, house hacks in an expensive area. The more expensive the market you're in, the more important house hacking becomes. It doesn't make a lot of sense to save money if you could pay $500 to $1,000 for rent for somewhere. You're saving a little bit, right? But if you can eliminate $2,000 or $3,000 a month in housing expenses, like I house hack here in the Tacoma area, where I'm renting out 2 bedrooms for $2,000, one bedrooms for $1,300, 3 bedrooms for we have one. A friend's got one going up for $2,650. That's a 3 bedroom. So if you house hack and eliminate an expense like that, we're not in Tacoma is near as expensive as San Francisco is, or the Bay Area at least. So if you house hack and eliminate the expense there, then there you have two options. The first one is to do what Millennial Mike does, then invest at a distance. He found a mentor who invests in Gary, Indiana. So he bought some properties in Gary. I think he's got some in another location now too. Or what I like to do is, so Tacoma's expensive. I drew, like I call them, like the ripples in a pond, concentric circles around the biggest metropolitan area that you are. At some point, as those circles go out far enough, you're going to find this equilibrium balance where the price of properties and the rents start to balance out in small multifamily. In downtown Tacoma, there are some duplexes that probably are negative cash flow. So there's a lot of deals that are negative cash flow because people put them up for too much money, but a good deal is probably still not that great. But if you go far enough out, I talk about my portfolio being between Tacoma and Olympia and Washington, but none of my properties are in Tacoma or in Olympia. They're all around it, far enough out in the Tacoma area that would go out to this town called Spanaway or this town called Yelm or McKenna. You're pretty far out from the city, but you have enough economic drivers to where there's demand for your rentals. So if you're in the Bay Area, Michael Zuber went out 2.5 hours to, he calls it somewhere else, but the Madera area. And he invests 2.5 hours away. He says it on his own channel. He regrets not house hacking and not house hacking sooner. So that would be my suggestion. The power of house hacking in the expensive area is very important. And then either invest out of state in a market like Gary, Indiana, or something that functions like it did probably a year ago, because you have to figure out what's going on currently. Or far enough away from where you are, like Michael Zuber did, 2.5 hours away, to where you find properties that will cash flow. Nicholas, howdy. The lumberjack already knew you were talking about him. Can't get the time back with your kids. You can't. I'm not mean enough to actually do it, but I asked Matt to send me a picture of him and his kids so that every time I want to send the Pink Panther, I can actually send the family and say, this is what you're missing today. Not mean enough to actually do it. I'll just talk about it in a live stream someday. I can't say but not today because I just did it. Julie, howdy. You applied for a home equity line of credit on Sunday. You've had 30 mortgage lenders call you today. Yeah, that sounds about right. They are experiencing the crash in transactions and are what you would call desperate. Kelly, howdy. Your VA appraisal came back 15K lower today on your 575 quadplex. Closing is next Monday. Trying to figure out if I should bridge the gap. My hope every time I have an appraisal is that it is $15,000 or $10,000 short. That's my hope every time. It gives you some negotiating power. If you have the ability to bridge the gap and the deal's still good enough, you still can. But you can go back and just, because right now, sellers are scared. They're not getting as many offers as they were. And how many days on market did you have? And how many backup offers did you have? Your appraisal is negotiating power. It's stronger than going, hey, the home inspection came back, and here's all the things I'd like to have fixed. You can either fix them or we can adjust the price. That's a request. An appraisal is, I have an actual reason why I can back out of this deal and not lose a penny of my earnest money, or you can come down and meet me. So I would generally tend to think, me personally, the appraisal came in 15,000 less. I would like you to adjust the rate because I don't want to pay more than what a professional says the property's worth. If they then say, we're not going to lower the price, then I would ask to meet in the middle or meet somewhere, right? And say, you can bring that much to the table. I wouldn't just instantly throw back, I'm going to bridge the gap. It came in 15 short. I'm going to bring 15 more to the table. Unless the numbers work where you like the cash flow and the equity position from doing that. But I would first start with, here's what a licensed, educated, trained professional said the property's worth based on current comps. I would like to change that price to that and see if they're even open to it. I had that happen one time, 10,000, but the seller also let me know that they were in the middle of a 1031 and I was in second position, and the first time already fell through. So their timeline was pretty advanced. So I kind of had some more things in my favor to negotiate with. My parents, when I was a kid, we were, I want to say poor, but that's not even close. And only people with white in their beard will understand what I'm about to say, or gray in their hair. We were so poor, we couldn't afford food stamps. In California, the way it worked in the dinosaur days was you gave them $1, they gave you $2 in food stamps. We didn't even have the money to do that. So my parents would go to swap meets all the time. It was their thing. And it wasn't to go and find things to put on Facebook Marketplace because it didn't exist yet. It was literally, this is how they got everything. They never really went to, stores. They would go to swap meets to get things. And the thing I learned was you negotiate with everybody, because I was a kid watching all this happen at the table. If you paid whatever they were asking, it was insulting. And second, the person with the power to walk away has the power. If that seller thinks that you will back out because the appraisal came in low, they're more likely to agree to you asking for the price to change than if they think you really want the place and you'll pay it no matter what. Then they would just say, no, we want you to bridge the gap. So I would start from the position of, I could just walk away because it came in low on appraisal. Because think about it. Let's say the deal works and your numbers are there for cash flow. Yes, bridge the gap, buy the deal. But if it appraised low, you're starting negative equity. So if you had to sell next year, you would need a 15%, or not 15%, a $15,000 gain to get to where you are. And it's going to cost you 8% to sell. The average selling fees are around 8%. So there's a few reasons why you might not want it unless it cash flows the right amount. But I would always try to see if they would adjust the price first. Robert, howdy. Last stream you can make it to for a while. Are you going to take a vacation with the state or out of the country? Make sure you get my email, Robert. If you have questions, you can send them. And then my chat moved. Sorry. Which I appreciate. That means somebody's asking questions. Larry, howdy, from Spokane. Post Falls and nearly Coeur d'Alene. There's kind of an all run together with the crazy growth here. Yeah, I almost went to Coeur d'Alene. When I drove to Arizona, I went up to Twin Falls, but I didn't go up quite as far north as Coeur d'Alene. Is he real? Is I real? I don't know how you say that. Took a message back to make me lose sleep tonight and always wonder forever what was said. Howdy. And Izzy, howdy. Um, have you ever got caught without a permit? I might have an unpermitted half bathroom based on my tax card from the previous owner. If so, how would you deal with it? Um, there's probably work that's been done at my properties that wasn't permitted. So far, I haven't found anything like a room added or anything. The bath, if it wasn't permitted, I don't know that I would worry about that. I would generally only worry about unpermitted work if it added living space that you were then renting out, because some municipalities have weird rules where if a tenant complains and there was living space that wasn't permitted as living space, wasn't permitted, like allowed, and had a permit for it, then not only does that tenant not have to pay rent, but you have to remunerate them for everything that they've paid you. You have to give them back all the money that you've ever collected from rent. Laws are different in each area, so know what your area is about. But the bathroom, I don't know that I would worry about too much because it was already done when you bought it. Could become an issue if you ever go to sell and somehow the county or city finds out. If you have a place where they come and inspect, and it was done before you owned it, the worst case I've seen in some areas is the cities will make you then have it inspected for permitting, and you might have to pay some fines. It's not you haven't committed fraud on purpose. You didn't have the work done without getting a permit. And I have some cities where I can honestly say, and I'll say this on YouTube, I've done that. There's this one retarded city that if you have more than a 6-inch repair in drywall, you have to get a permit for it. And I'm sorry, but the first time somebody throws their head through the wall, I'm not calling the city for a permit to fix drywall. Sue me, city. Um, yeah, I wouldn't worry about that too much because it's not adding living space. If you get inspected, though, you could end up having to pay for inspections, get it permitted, pay some fines. Going to the city and saying, "Hey, there's been work done that hasn't been permitted," might avoid the fines now. But remember, fine always just means legal with a fee. Uh, you could then draw attention to the property to get it inspected. So I don't know if I would be the first person out there trying to say, "Hey, city, come be involved in my stuff." Bill, I kind of get the feeling this week's talk was made for Matt. Well, it was made for Matt, but it was made for me realizing in the last month. And so I retired on the 5th, and then I had about 2 weeks where I kind of did this exit strategy, hand things off, and make sure everything was covered. But now I've actually had, and I was sick for the whole week. So, yay, couldn't even call in sick. But I was retired for over a week now of actual time where, other than scheduling a bunch of interviews with interesting people, I open schedule. Getting the 14 hours in a day compared to 5 is a huge shift that is taking me some adjusting. I thought figuring out how to spend money was going to be the challenge. It is. Figuring out how to spend time, that's going to be the challenge too. Bird vids. Howdy. Spokenite. Spokanite. I think that's where Cody Davis has some of his rentals. Cody and Christian from the multifamily strategy. They're in the Eastern Washington side. Lumberjack landlord. He has a lot more time to build out monologues now that he's retired. That is true. I should show you. There's actually a bit of a monologue built out. And then Cameron, howdy, took some message back. Dividend Dave. The older I get, the more I'm about the return on time. Absolutely. REI Stoners. Howdy. Yeah, and start doing yoga and meditation, and you'll be going strong in your 60s. Exactly. I'm going to stick with ground defensive tactics. Breaks your teeth every now and then, but I think it keeps you young. Tom, howdy. Glad to be here with you. Glad you're here too. Levi, howdy. I've found meal prep to be very helpful in the path to FI, but tired of cooking. Can you elaborate on your cost per meal, how you find the restaurants to not have to cook yourself? Absolutely. I was actually going to do a live stream on the slides on this. So here's the Cliff Notes version. Single parent, 3 kids, each one with a picky palate and different. Imagine having a kid that doesn't like pasta and they're just too picky to even cover. Each one is different. So cooked, and my kids are 5 years apart. So 10 years between oldest and youngest, which means 28 years of parenthood. I'm never cooking again in my life. Um, yeah, no. So that is time freedom. I do not shop. I haven't been in a store, if you take out Lowe's and Home Depot and a flooring store, in like 10 years. I think I stopped by a Safeway like 2 or 3 times to grab something for, whatever that you just need right then. But I don't shop for food to bring to the house because then I would just have food that goes bad in the fridge. Um, my fridge is either leftovers or spices. Like that's all that's in there. And alien vodka, which of course, you have to thank the sponsor of today's video, which doesn't sponsor me, but makes the videos possible. Um, refrigerate your vodka. That's a lesson learned. I mean, water. Refrigerate your water. It's better. So I don't shop. I save that time. I don't store food that can go bad and throw it away. That saves money. I don't cook. That saves time. And I don't have to clean up. That they're talking like 3 or 4 ways of saving time to get your you time back. If your thing is cooking and you watch cooking shows, great. Have at it. But after 28 years of cooking for picky kids, I just don't ever want to do it again. So here's how I pick the restaurants around me. And this is what's going to be in the live stream on the slides, if I can remember. There's 2 things you want to look for. First, you want to find restaurants that don't make their money from food. Let that sink in for a second. Imagine a restaurant that doesn't make its money from food. Bar, casino. It's probably more. But those are the 2 I look for. Bars and casinos. How do they make their money? Alcohol, gambling. I want to say I don't drink. I don't pay for drinks at a restaurant. Fair enough. And I don't gamble. I used to gamble when I was like super poor, like before even figuring out finances. I'd have like $20 to my name. I'd go gamble with it because I might turn it into 40 or 60, right? And if you lost it, you just lost $20. But now I realized how hard I had to work for the $20 and what $20 could mean if I invested it every year for the rest of my life, what the return would be. I don't gamble. So the casino and the bar has very good priced food. So that's the first thing. Look for restaurants that don't make money from food. Second, find the food you like. So for me, pretty much any Thai restaurant anywhere, you can go there anytime. But I like steak. Certain bars will have steak night. So you go in there, and it's like $10 for 2 meals. And you get the steak and the salad and the mashed potato and the whatever, right? All that stuff, whole meal. And you're going to take some home for later. Or they have the spaghetti night, or they have whatever. So you figure out what day of the week different bars have what you like, or different casinos do different food events. There's the Red Wind Casino here in the Pacific Northwest that every Friday and Saturday night has the buffet, and it's all you can eat. It's like $20, but I mean, it is all you can eat, and it should be all you should eat, not all you can eat. So I don't do that very often. But those are the 2 things I look for. The restaurant doesn't make its money from food, and it's the food that I want. That took the shopping around to find what day of the week does the bar or casino have the special that I like, and then that's where I go. Saving all the time shopping, prepping, cooking, cleaning, throwing away waste. And then I've had some people comment that eating at restaurants might not be healthy. Find the healthy restaurants. Find the healthy restaurants with the happy hour, the time where the food's the right price. Don't DoorDash. Like, how do you educate your kids on how expensive some things are when it's something they really like to do? But I've seen like a $5 to $10 meal be $40 by the time fees are done. Yeah. So avoid DoorDash. Look for those 2 things I talked about. And it works for the lazy. Let me see how much of that I get out on the slides. Robert, howdy. And here I am in my late 20s thinking that I got to retire in a few years where my ability to do things will drop. Yeah, it's good. That's a good motivation. You don't think, oh, I've got decades, right? Imagine the multiplication of your life if you retire at 30 or 35 compared to retiring at 52. You might have 5 or 6 or 7 times the amount of life that I get to have. That's motivation. And yes, David and Dave, come down, have a drink from the tiny little flask that I have. The cost of living, howdy. Risk is always getting the right tenant. Tenant can trash a place, not pay rent, collect enough deposit. Okay. Yeah. So there's the risk of that. There's the risk of, I'm trying to think, laws being voted in, rent control being voted in. If you buy a property and you're using short-term rentals, your ability to do short-term in your area can go away. So there are risks like that. I was trying to think of like, what's the big risk? But if there was a risk, I wouldn't have retired on rentals. There's manageable risk. Tenant screening is very important. I screen based on credit score and evictions. No eviction ever, so history doesn't matter if it was from the 60s. Wouldn't let them in my property if I could know about it in advance. Then I can worry about credit score, not income. I know people making 6 figures that are late on every bill. But if you've worked hard to get your credit score up, people protect that. And with my credit criteria of 700 or higher, I've never had a later missing payment, and I haven't had a tenant trash a property. So tenant screening is important. And to get around the fear of having a tenant trash your property, this I got from my brother who has 10 paid off rentals and retired at 50. So he beat me. Plan on the tenant trashing your property. It's not a risk if you have enough reserves and you have the emotions prepared for, I know my tenant's going to pour cement down the drain. I know my tenant's going to punch holes in the walls. I know my tenant's going to blah, 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 whatever. Pick everything, the worst thing that you can imagine them doing. Have kids. Kids trash places. Just expect it. So when you go in, like I just did a tenant walkthrough probably a month ago now, which is coming up, available. It was spotless. Like that tenant got their whole deposit back twice because I gave the wrong amount back the first time because we had different leases, but they got it all back. Dividend Dave, what other kinds of investments would you consider doing besides real estate investing, and why? So I've said this a couple times, so hopefully there's somebody here who hasn't heard me say this before, and maybe it's you, Dave. Warren Buffett says to diversify. Kevin O'Leary, Mr. What is it, Fabulous or Mr. Wonderful or something, says to diversify. No more than 20% in any one asset class and no more than 5% in any one asset. So they talk about that, right? Well, Warren Buffett has a partner, Charlie Munger, who's been partners for decades, close to a century, but decades. And he says, and he said it at a live event one time, and you could actually see Warren Buffett get a little upset until he explained it. Don't diversify. So me personally, I don't want to invest in anything else. I have a couple ounces of gold. It's more for like the zombie apocalypse than actual prepping for any actual financial thing. Conversation piece, maybe. I don't want to own stocks. If somebody gave me stocks, I would sell them. I don't want to own crypto. If somebody gave me crypto, I would sell it. I would put that money to work in real estate. Because you focus on one asset class to get wealthy. Once you're wealthy, then you can diversify to protect it. I think in my mind, there might be a different number for you, but for me, that's about a net worth of $5 million. Once you have $5 million in net worth, so cash flow is not even a thing here. This is just a net worth thing. Then it might pay to, you have mastered your asset class. Your cash flow is, mine's like 5 times what I need. And I'm only at about a little over 3 million in net worth. So at 5, I think it would even be more. The cash flow would be more. Then diversify into some other asset class. And there's 3 main paths that I would talk about when it comes to reaching financial freedom. So not everybody that watches my stuff is all about real estate. If you want to start and grow a business and take it to the point where somebody else runs the day-to-day, like the people who run the CDL school or own the CDL school that I've been running, right? They're not at the campus. They're not running the day-to-day. The lady does more work than she should. She still does a lot of the books and stuff, but she could be more retired. It was actually funny when I said, hey, I'm retiring. She said she was a little jealous that I was going to get to retire. But they were very supportive. So start and grow a business. If you're going to do that, I'd probably, other than maybe if the real estate was house hacking or real estate was related to the business, I don't know that I would be trying to get as many rentals as I have because of the time commitment it takes to grow the business. If you want to invest in stocks, like the mental bandwidth that we have to understand how real estate, cash on cash, screening tenants, finding leases, picking a market, understanding what's going on in the market, all the time it takes to understand real estate. If you're going to do stocks, I would just do stocks, right? So mine was real estate. So I'm still focused primarily on real estate. I could at some point see taking a couple $100 and putting it into an index fund, but I haven't studied stocks. I would want to do 6 months to a year, like studying real estate, where I didn't do it right. I just jumped in and then educated myself later. I should have educated myself and then jumped in. Uh, that's how I would look at any other asset class. I think as far as investing goes, crypto is too volatile for me. And while you can make good money at it, I would suggest doing it with a really small percentage of your net worth. So if your net worth, 1 or 2% really to start, and unless you take the time to really master it. But if you'll notice, anytime crypto is on an upswing, there's a ton of crypto posts on how great it is. And for the last 6 months, everybody's silent. So what other assets? The biggest asset I would think outside of real estate that I actually would invest in, which I have, self-education. I've never totaled it up, which I should. It's got to be in the thousands of hours of taking in podcasts on real estate, on financial independence, on how money works. Um, that is paying off. Like if I didn't focus on, how many hundreds of hours it took for me with my memory to get to be confident enough to say, hey, let me do a live stream for 2 to 3 hours with a bunch of people who are investing longer and more than me, but confidently answer almost every question that comes in. Every now and then find one and go, hey, that's a great question for Matt. He's got the brain, you ask him Sunday. But the amount of the thousands of hours, because I'm not just speaking from, hey, in the last, what, 12 years now, I've been investing, and this is what I've learned with my 16 rental units that I have. No, this is me talking. I've never used an FHA loan, but I've studied it to understand when I would use it. I've not used my VA loan, but I've studied when I would use it. I've not done a flip, but I've looked at flipping. I've not done a burn method, but I've looked at hundreds and hundreds of hours on each of those topics. That's your mind, your knowledge. That's the biggest investment I think that you should be making. John, Texas. Howdy. Larry, no-go years. Have you researched the cost of assisted living? Yes. It's freaking expensive. Might need another few more small multifamilies before then, assuming today's rates. Yes, I actually have a friend whose mother is in assisted care. And you know how you get further into your no-go years, and it's your not move years. They basically go, you can get these covered by Medicare, where it'll cover it once all of your assets are depleted. And they actually look back at historical records from like the last 5 years. So you can't just give all your stuff away and then all of a sudden go. So they're literally having to burn through like $9,000 a month until she's broke. Will cover the cost. What is it? Medical expenses are the leading cause of bankruptcy in the United States. It's definitely have an asset for every expense. And sometimes for that, as you get older, several of those assets are going to cover that. A cost of living. Howdy. Thank you. Cody Knight. Howdy. So what are the pros and cons of investing in a quadplex in a C neighborhood? My preference. So pro. Versus a duplex in the same neighborhood. What do you like, dislike about either compared to each other? So the benefit to me for the duplex is I haven't had a turnover in a difference in duplex or quadplex. My turnovers have only been in single family house and triplex so far. Is that true? No, I've had a duplex because the guy passed away. Does that count? It was still tenant turnover. But the duplex has more defined yards and the tenants take care of it. The fourplex, if I wasn't so lazy, I would mow the lawn here. Instead, I have like once a month or twice a month or whatever, like $200 a month, have the yard done. So the yard at the fourplex is more an expense or something you take care of yourself. The duplex, the tenants usually take care of the yard. As long as you have separate meters for things like electricity, gas, or anything like that, as much as you can separate utilities, they're the same. The big difference with the duplex and the fourplex is the duplex you can, if you owner occupy, It's not easy, but it's possible to find a 5% down owner occupied lender. So, and usually with a local credit union or something. There have been years where that was kind of normal. Last couple of years, it's been 15% even owner occupied, but you can find 5% down. The fourplex, it's usually 15 or 20% down, even owner occupied, unless you do FHA. FHA equals the playing field for 2, 3, or 4 units, so it stays the same, 3.5%. So it depends on what kind of loan product you're using. That would make FHA more attractive for the fourplex for me if I needed to do a low down payment. Um, Look at the building layout. It's more common to find duplexes that are side by side. I prefer side by side because you don't have as many noise complaints, and a plumbing issue only impacts one tenant instead of two. It's harder to find a fourplex like the one I have that are like townhouse units side by side. Usually in Washington, so I don't know about your area, but fourplexes are usually over unders, two up top, two on the bottom. My preference then would be the duplex side by side. If you're just starting out and it's your first property, Matt would suggest getting the 4 unit first because FHA wants you to be moving towards a single family or into a larger single family. So it's easier to go fourplex than duplex, or fourplex with more rooms, and then triplex, duplex, whatever. So he calls it the 4-3-2-1 method. If you're not using FHA and you have to save the down payment, the duplex probably has a lower threshold because of the cost. If it's your first unit, fourplex and duplex probably doesn't matter as much, but I wouldn't want to own a 10plex as my first property. I would prefer to get duplexes spread out so that they're pulling tenants from different sources. Because if you have a 10plex, all of your tenants are from the one area. But my properties are more than 10 miles apart, so my tenants are pulled from different sources. So in that case, the duplex would be better than the fourplex, but those are closer in size to where it almost wouldn't matter. For me, which one has the better yield based on price, interest rates, and your rents? Yield. Even Michael Zuber will say this. He doesn't care if it's single family, small multifamily, or a 20 unit. Which one has the best yield? That's the one he goes for. So look at your yield. If they're both in the same areas, go do a drive-by. Which neighborhood seems nicer? And then look at your yield. Tom, somebody kill me before I get old. But then again, it's a matter of perspective on what old is. It is not a privilege that everyone gets to experience. My fear was never getting old. My fear would be getting old and having to work or being a burden to your kids. That's the main. Some of the main benefits to financial freedom is first, you don't have to work. So as you get older and you want to scale back, you can. You have the option. Where was I? I was literally was at Lowe's buying strips for between LVP and tile. And the guy helping me at Lowe's had to be close to 70 or 60 something with a rough road. It looked like it hurt him to do everything. Don't want to be in that position. And he could be there by choice. He could be like, oh, it keeps me active, keeps me out of the house. Great. But if he has to work and he has no choice, that sucks. That sucks at 25, let alone 75. Legacy, howdy. I'm about to cash purchase third single family resident. This is my third rental. If it will clear about $1,700 a month. I live in an apartment, $925 a month. Really wanting to move into the home. I'm not happy in an apartment. Interesting. So if I was in that position, why are you buying in cash? That is not something I would never do that in the first 10 years of investing and until I had multiples of my cash flow of my living expenses and I was just adding cash flow. It gets so much slower to save up the full amount of the purchase. Can you owner occupy a purchase and so you're living in an apartment, but you already have rentals, so it would be a 5% down conventional to buy a single family owner occupied. Take the rest of the money and do it 20% down on 1 or 2 rentals instead of cash buying that house. Have 2 rentals that cash flow. Be in a house yourself. Buy a small multifamily. I mean, you don't like an apartment, but what about a house with an ADU? So you still can have less than $925 a month going out in rent. You can have the ADU paying your mortgage. You have several options there if you add leverage to the mix. As your portfolio grows, it might make sense sometime to buy all cash, but not when you're growing. It slows you down so much, and your yield Like you can get cash flow by paying cash, but your yield goes down. The more money you put into the deal, the less your actual yield is. Uh, Even though you can have more cash flow, but you had to make that money first. So you can add 2 or 3 rentals, and then think about round numbers. You have $100,000. You can buy $100,000 property, or you can put down 5,000 on your $100,000 property to live in. You're 5% owner occupied. You can put 20,000 on 3 rentals, and now instead of having a $100,000 asset, you have 4. So next year, when there's a 10% increase in property value, you don't gain $10,000, you gain 40, and there's principal pay down every month. So there's just so many benefits to using leverage. Don't over leverage. Don't go out and say, I'm going to use my VA loan, wrap the closing costs, buy a fourplex, and be 105% leverage right off the bat and negative cash flow, even if all the units were rented. Like, don't buy a bad deal. But if you can get into your own place where your cost of living for your housing is less than 925 or 950 or whatever, yeah, 925 that you're paying now, so you can improve, reduce, eliminate that expense, get into something that you can house hack. It's an apartment, but you get to pick the neighbors, or you can do a house with an ADU, so they're not even touching. And buy a couple of rentals, the cash flow would probably be the same or more than buying one rental. 2 or 3 that can cash flow 500 each, you're really close to the 1,700, and you can be house hacking for the same $100,000. And I used a nice round number. It might be you have 300,000, and the numbers work the same because you could either buy one or leverage 3 or 4. Mine is just a suggestion. Like, there's no right way to do this. If you want to buy all cash because you just hate debt, that's better than money sitting in the bank. But you also said not happy in an apartment. Tom, anybody in Maryland looking to team up and find some sub 2 or pre foreclosure deals, let me know. We can figure it out. Sounds good. CBW, thanks. Thank you. PJ, howdy. Hope you're doing well. I am. I think I'm pretty much fully recovered. I was sick all week. My voice is back to normal. Water helps. Matt, the lumberjack landlord, actually offered to fill in tonight in case I didn't have my voice back, so I appreciate that. We are doing this Thursday at 10 a.m., if we don't have technical issues, a Three Amigos live stream. So Thursday at 10 a.m., the Three Amigos is going to do a live stream where all 3 of us are on there to answer questions for at least an hour. Me and Matt would probably just do it all day, but Mike's going to be there, so it'll be an hour. And the chat moved, and I see that this guy here needs blocked somehow. There we go. I have it set to subscribers only, so now the bots are actually subscribing to the channel. Interesting. Where was I at? My chat moved, which is awesome. Here we go. CBWGBJ. Nicholas, howdy. Purchasing a duplex, the underwriter just asked for a second appraisal. You ever experienced that? Was the appraisal off? And I have not had them request a second appraisal. That would be an interesting one. Michael Zuber and Matt the lumberjack landlord have done exponentially more deals than me. Maybe they have experienced that before, but that's not something I've experienced. I know that if your appraisal comes in low, you can arbitrate it, argue it again. Some people, when they get an appraisal they don't like, will just go to a different lender and get a new appraisal instead of fighting the first one. Appraisers don't generally like to give a different appraisal than someone else if they know about it. So I haven't had that, but lenders, it's their money. Like, they make the rules because they're figuring out if they want to lend you the money or not. So I wouldn't say it's illegal or unethical. I would say it's not something I've dealt with. But Michael Zuber does live streams in the Thursday at 10. We'll all 3 be on here, so that'd be a great time to show up if you can. If not, Mike Zuber does his Saturdays at 8 a.m. and Lumberjack Landlord does his Sundays at 8:30 Pacific. And they might have an answer to that. Cameron, howdy. I'm 26-year-old from Kent, Auburn. Nice, cool. We're close to each other. Question: is it a good idea for me to invest on a $900,000 fourplex? Rents are equal to $4,750. Estimate monthly is $4,500. Unit 2 is vacant. So Normally, I would say, I don't know your area, so I can't invest there. So I can tell you, I wouldn't own a property in King County if it was free. Like if someone gave me 100 grand in a property in King County, I probably wouldn't even take it to sell. So if you're in the Kent, Auburn area, that's King County. There's a negative there for me, but that's your market. You like it. I'd have to run the numbers on, are you using, and so don't answer these, but this would be something, I'm going to put my email in the chat. You can message me and I'd walk you through like the how I would run that. A lot of agents and some investors will say you have to run the rents as they are now. I would look up what is the area average rent and then go about 10% lower because of the binder strategy. If you're familiar with my content, you know that I have a strategy that gets the tenants to request a rent increase, which generally takes them up to about within 10% of area average rents. So I would run the rents there. Are you house hacking? If you are, I would run it as though all 4 units were rented, like it was the year after you moved out. Uh, and I would figure out what is the yield. So is it a good idea for you to invest $900,000 fourplex? So I'd have to figure out what the yield is and is normal. So I don't invest in King County, so I'd have to look at what is a normal yield. In my area, it was not common, but I could find deals in the 7 to 8%. So I looked for tens. So if in your area you can get 7 8, you look for tens. If you can get fours, you look for sixes. Like you want to look for a little bit better than what is average. How does that deal compare to your market? Usually takes a while to understand the market. But when you're looking at a fourplex, you also want to know your area, areas to avoid. So if you live in or around Tacoma, you know that there's an area called McKinley Avenue. And if anything touches it, it's a war zone. You don't go there. If you're in Tumwater, Washington, you know that there's a place called 301 T Street, which if there's anything around there, you don't go there. Like you need to know your area. What part of Kent and Auburn would you not want to invest in because you couldn't feel safe to go there and collect rents or even go there to meet and sign a lease? So I would know if it's in an area that is good or bad. So you should know the market for that. Um, then there's other questions. Is there an HOA? I don't buy in HOAs. Uh, Other things to think of the area. Is it next to something noisy? Is it on a freight month? Is there parking? If you have a fourplex, one of the most important things is you want at least 8 parking spots so that each unit has at least 2 places to park cars. So there's like a long list of things. And if you email me, I'll go through all of them with you and tell you how that goes through emails. REI Stoners. Is there a benefit to buying near a college? I feel I would see higher turnover. So if you rent to college students, you could see a higher tenant turnover, but you might be renting by the room at colleges that would make more money and make the tenant turnover worth it. Not all people who rent by a college are students. You have faculty, you have the businesses that support the college where people stay for a long time. You have the Van Wilders who are in college for 7 years. So you have different options of things that happen around a college. It would depend on the market. What I would try to do is have diversified tenant base. So I know you've been on watching my stuff for a while, so you know the 3 ways I diversify. I would have, in that case, if you're near a college, I would try to only have, if it was a small multifamily, 1 or 2 of the units college students. Have the other, somebody that's in a more permanent position. And it's not a perfect science. I just know that if I was going to advertise in a college area, I would find out how the college students find their things. If there is there a website for that college and not advertise there. If I didn't want more, I would advertise on the base or with the Section 8 program, called the housing authority and let the counselor know, hey, here's the link to my place that's coming open next month. And so you can get alternate sources of people without discriminating. You can't say no college students, right? Like I wouldn't do that. And it's probably not legal. I don't know that it's a protected thing, but it would be stupid. But you can control where you advertise. And if you advertise to a different type of tenant, you can probably get more types of tenants that way. Tom, Dion, you're retired now. I think you could probably run 4 to 5 hour live streams near Everless. Then again, you may need another bottle of water. That might get a bit silly. That by the time that cup is gone, the water does make you a bit silly. Um, yeah, so Cameron, you would own or occupy your fourplex. I still run the numbers as though it's the year after I've moved out to see if that's going to cash flow or not. I have a video on my channel, how to run the numbers on a house hack. It was one I actually did in Florida. Almost fell in the water. I could do live streams for 4 to 5 hours. I don't think that people would hang out that long. I'm surprised people that there are some people that are on for like 10 or 20 minutes. I appreciate it. Thanks for hanging out. There are some people who log in and then stay for the 3 hours. And thank you very much. That's awesome. Hopefully, the information is helpful. And I'm sorry I'm not more entertaining. Um, as CBW says, amazing. Thank you, Eric. Please explain DSCI and 7 to 10 year make refi you were talking about earlier. Sure, happy to, Eric. If anybody isn't familiar with my content, I have some brain trauma from Desert Storm and I have a memory issue. So I don't remember seeing your name, Eric, but yeah, I probably have. Matt the Lumberjack Landlord, his memory is like a steel trap. He'll go, "Oh, you've never been to my channel, or you've commented twice, so here's your answer." I don't remember that kind of stuff. But thanks for coming and asking the questions. So here's the DSCI. So it's a debt service coverage ratio. If your debt is $1,000 a month, you're going to have a mortgage on the property of $1,000 a month. The lender is lending you money as long as the rents are in a 1.1 or 1.2 ratio. Each lender might be a little different. 1.1 seems to be the minimum and the most common. So that means 1.1. So 1.1 times the rent times the mortgage. So if the mortgage is 1,000, principal, interest, taxes, insurance, and it might be principal and interest, but your DSCR lender will tell you if your mortgage is 1,000, the rents have to be 1,100. That's 1.1 times the mortgage. If your mortgage is 50,000, right, you need to make 5,500 a month in rent, 55,000, whatever. So it's 1.1 times. So they don't look at you. The reason DSCR is used is, let's say you have inconsistent work history, or you have a low salary, but you have a big down payment. They're going to look at your credit score. Credit score does matter to a debt service coverage ratio lender. So your credit score you still want a good credit score. I think the goal is 740, just like regular conventional loans. 740 or higher gets you the best interest rates. You can lend all the way down to like a 620, but your interest rates get worse. Sometimes your down payment requirements go up. So the debt service means they're going to lend you money to buy a property. They're going to look at the property and how it performs. So asset-based lending. What does the property perform? How much rent does it kick off? That's how much you can borrow. So sometimes you can get a loan on a property, but you might have to pay more down payment to bring the payment on the debt service down enough to where the rent's covered. Right. So there's a lot of ways to play with the numbers there. So this is a way to also cover if you're you just moved in from another country, you don't have the work history, you don't have something the lenders look for in regular conventional loans. So with asset-based or debt service or commercial lending, some of them are adjustable rates. I avoid those at all costs. Some of them are fixed rates. So Convoy Home Loans actually has a loan product that is 30 or 40-year fixed rate debt, right? So it goes up to 8 units. So it changed actually my search criteria for this year. So debt service loans up to 8 units. Same thing, debt service has to be 1.1 times, and your credit score has to be good, and your net worth has to be, some lenders, at least the value of the property. Some it's half the value of the property. So there's a net worth requirement. So they'll look at all your other properties and your equity, and they'll do the math on that. You'll actually do a personal financial statement, which is the first time I had to do that for them. I felt like a grown up for the first time because I had to call Matt and ask for help on how to do it. So you do that for a debt service loan. The loan reevaluation period is on commercial lending and some debt service loans at 5, 7, or 10 years, depending on the loan that you signed up for. They will look at your cash flow again to make sure that you're at 1.1. So it's possible with some debt service loans or commercial lending that at 5, 7, or 10 years, they look and they go, okay, so you're not doing really well. You have to sell, you have to refinance, or you have to write us a big check to bring the debt service down to where you're at a 1.1 ratio of whatever the current rents are compared to your mortgage. So to me, it's effective and people do it all the time. And it's a lending product that works and it solves a lot of problems for people. I haven't generally done anything but fixed rate debt because I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm an investor. I don't want to invest to create a job. I don't want to think in 7 years, what do I have to do to make sure this all works? I buy a property, 30-year lease, put a tenant in place, try never to think about it again, and just watch the cash flow grow over the years, right? Super lazy, was super busy. So I haven't done that. They are an effective loan product, and they are sometimes the way to go. depending on, if you want to buy a 5 unit, you can't use commercial loan. You can't use residential lending for that. So a debt service or asset-based lend or commercial loan is the loan products you're going to have to use. If you have 10 mortgages in your name, you can no longer do residential loans in your own name, and you might need to go for a DSCR loan because it doesn't count as one of the 10 in your name. There are lenders who will count them as 10 in your name, but they don't actually count as 10 in your name because all lenders aren't made the same. So hopefully that answers what debt service coverage ratio is. So it's DSCR, and the 7 to 10 loan reevaluation period, which is not something I want, because what if you had a loan reevaluation period in 2020 and some of your tenants chose not to pay rent? So your net operating income looked bad for that current flash moment in time, and you didn't have the ability to refinance, and you didn't have a big check to write, so you'd have to sell. Luckily, in 2020, property values were going up. In 2009, people saw that property values sometimes go down. And then Michael Zuber swoops in and buys them all. The cost of living. Howdy, remodels eating into cash flow. Did one major for $40,000, paid cash, rent went up $500, had vacancy, so another worked up $40,000. Third just gave notice. Cosmetic 10 reserves running out. So $40,000 on a rehab. You must be doing everything. Like, I mean, everything. And so I would look at the return. So $40,000 is what you're spending to update your, wow. Like the most expensive I've seen anyone do is $28,000. And that was what I think it was anything they didn't do except they didn't replace the garage door. They pretty much did everything else. I don't know that I've ever spent more than $5,000 on a tenant flip because I just usually do flooring and paint. I'm not in Class A or even Class B neighborhoods. I'm in Class C, so it's safe, clean, functional, or safe, functional, clean. One of those three, one of those two ways of saying it. But if you're going to spend $40,000 to change it, and you're only getting a $500 increase in rent, what would the rent be if you didn't do that much of an upgrade and you just did cosmetics? I think compared to what rents used to be, you're probably going to see a $500 a month increase anyway. Yeah, that just seems like a lot of money to spend for only $500. Yeah. If your reserves are running out, well, I wouldn't, well, some people would borrow money to do the rehab, but that's just a lot of money. That is a great question for Matt, the lumberjack landlord, because every time he does a tenant flip, he does a full, all new kitchen, flooring, everything. I don't tend to do that. It doesn't make a difference in the rent in my area. Your area might be different. A 3-bedroom with platinum countertops and a 3-bedroom with laminate is going to rent for within $100 of it. It just doesn't matter in my area. Your area average rents set your rents, not the type of stuff you put into your unit. In Class C, in Class B or A, that might make a difference. I don't invest there, so I would maybe ask Matt what he would suggest you do in that case. The cost of living. Non-qualified mortgages cost 9% now, make tough borrowing, and some of them will actually require you buy down the rate, which gets you down to like 2 or 3 points, can get you down to 6.5%. So you're right. That is something to point out. A debt service coverage ratio loan, a commercial loan, asset-based lending, the non-qualified mortgage, because qualifying mortgages is what they're going to use you to qualify. Non-qualified means they're looking at the property instead of you. Do tend to have a higher interest rate. Tom, can you or Matt do a video where you can run some various owner finance deals, such as some difference of rates and balloon payments, or if you borrow 10% down payment to get the 50-40-10? So we can absolutely do that. Curious of the multitude of ways to structure a deal. So here's what I would suggest. Nothing you just talked about. A lot of sellers, when you look at doing owner financing, have never even thought of it. You're educating them. Why would you breathe into existence the term balloon payment or interest rate? Zuber's done a purchase where he got 0 interest because the person just wanted to get a certain price. When you're negotiating with the seller, I would usually do a low interest and a fixed rate debt, but explain that it's a note. They own the note. So if they ever want the money sooner, if they want that balloon payment, they can sell the note, right? Instead of you committing to something like a balloon payment or a cash out time. 30-year fixed rate debt, lowest interest rate you could talk the seller into. Yes, we can do a video on that, but really it is that simple. You're educating the seller on seller financing. Make the deal work. And sometimes it can be negotiating price, but sometimes it's negotiating no interest rate or fixed rate debt, 30 or 40 years. Making a note, making sure it's done legally, it's registered, like all that stuff is all you've done through a real estate attorney or through a brokerage on, goes through title just like a regular purchase. But make it benefit you. And everyone that I talk to always says, "Oh, I want to do seller financing, but I want the balloon payment in 5 years." Well, why are you even talking balloon payment? And why'd you pick 5 years? Like, the seller has no clue how it works until you say, "Here's what we're going to do. Here's what would work for me." Because what you're selling is no capital gains hit right now on a big amount, consistent monthly income. Sometimes the seller wants to know that you have an early prepayment penalty, where if you refinance in less than 5 years, you're going to give them an extra 20 grand or something because they don't want all the money all at once. That's the reason they're seller financing. And so you can negotiate all kinds of things. When you do seller financing, you want to make sure that the amount of money that you're putting down satisfies what the seller wants and needs. Because what they need is their current existing loan either taken over or paid off, right? They need the agent's fees covered. If there's going to be an agent fee for the transaction, whether that's the legal, the attorney or your agents, because you don't want the seller to have to write a check to lose the asset. That's not going to go over very well. And then, is there an amount that they want? Do they want to take a vacation or buy an RV or do something with the money where they can handle the capital gains on a portion? All of that comes from using Matt the Lumberjack strategy of finding out to the seller what is the three most important things to you, and then making sure that your negotiations will match that. Great suggestion for a video. And that was the Cliff Notes version. Tom, curious. That was the same question. Eric, when you house hack, do you contact county for tax purposes if they are giving you homeowners exception? When do you contact? Also, when do you contact homeowners insurance company? Okay. So when you house hack, you are going to be telling your insurance right away. You're going to get the binder sent to your, that's not my binder strategy, but a binder from their insurance gets sent to your lender so that it gets paid. And you're going to announce that it's owner occupied. The second you stop house hacking, the day you move out, like the week before probably, you let them know. Because when you move out of a house hack, your insurance will go down. So many people get this wrong. They think having landlord insurance or an insurance with rentals is going to cost more, and that's not the case. You have homeowners insurance. You get the amount for injury, slip, fall, and then you get the amount for replacement. And I suggest doing full value replacement, not just the amount of the mortgage, because that's to protect the lender. I want to be made whole in case of a burn down, not just the lender, right? So that's homeowners insurance. When you live there, insurance also insures your personal stuff. That's what costs more. So I had a duplex. I was house hacking. Insurance was like just under $900 a month or something. It was either $890 or $910. I move into the fourplex. Insurance at the fourplex drops to $410. Like, it's half basically what it was because I'm no longer living there. So yes, the second you move out, you let them know because you're going to save money on insurance. With the county, if you're a 100% disabled veteran and you get a tax thing where you don't have to pay taxes on your property, let them know. I don't know that there's a homeowner's exception to taxes outside of that. So maybe that's something I need to Google because never heard of it. Maybe it's a state that you're in kind of thing. I know that if you're a veteran and you have 100% disabled, which I'm not, I don't qualify, you don't have to pay registration on one vehicle and property taxes on your primary residence. In most states, I know Washington State is a state that does that. So depending on your service-connected VA disability, you might want to look into that. A cost of living. Just paid off home. Hate to put loan back on just to remodel. Yeah, that would. It's an option. It's not one I would look at. I really want to do right now, especially with interest rates where they are. You're living there. Can you suffer through saving up and doing the remodel one piece at a time as you go instead of taking out a loan? I have a friend, not to call him out by name or anything, but Dan, who's retiring in 16 days. who took out a home equity line of credit and did something smart, used it to purchase a rental, but also spent like 70 grand updating his house. So I pick on him about it every time. A lot of people call, and this bothers me. I have this much equity. They use the term equity. No, you have this much capability to put debt on an existing asset or sell the asset. If you sell it, yeah, you get that much money, but you're just putting debt on an existing asset. So home equity line of credit, cash out refinance, those things that people do to recycle capital. If I would have trouble doing that to do something like update my house where I'm living, or buy an RV, or buy a boat, or something like that. But if I was going to buy a rental, I can almost justify it. I've never done it. I wouldn't want to. I like to save up the down payment, buy a rental, save up the down payment, buy a rental, never touch equity, because the cash flow made work completely optional in 8 years. And I worked for 4 more, but now I literally never have to work again for the rest of my life because I never touched the equity. If I pulled out equity, I'd have more units. I'd have a bigger portfolio. I'd be able to brag about numbers, but my cash flow would be less because I'd be adding debt to existing assets to create debt on new assets with limited cash flow. I hear a lot of people talk about getting $100 to $500 per door cash flow, and that's great because they use the Burr method, or they do all the they took out the home equity line of credit to buy the rental, so they have the added debt on the existing asset. I'm getting $800 to $1,000 cash flow per unit because I've never recycled capital. For 8 years, I recycled cash flow. Like every penny that came in that I wasn't using to just survive went into paying for the next property. Yeah, that would be a rough one for me. I don't know if I'd want to do that, especially for a remodel. Eric, got that. Also got the insurance. Robert, howdy. It's because I am on vacation, I can make your live stream. Most Tuesday evenings, I have meetings with team members. Awesome. Well, good. It's nothing negative then. I mean, enjoy your vacation. I appreciate hanging out here. Um, Hopefully, maybe you can make it to the Three Amigos live stream Thursday morning, 10 a.m. And it'll be on one rental at a time. It'll be on his channel. Rob, how about now? A Pink Panther? Howdy, Rob. Tom, you house hack with roommates. Nice. I house hacked with roommates now. I rent out a room in my unit. Technically, I think I'm probably renting a room from them based on the rents. But I house hacked my way through the police academy with roommates. I had young kids, and the academy was over an hour away. So I would go. Sometimes you'd have 8 to 12 hour days, and then you have to study for 5 hours. So driving home would be impossible, and then I'd just be a zombie anyways. So I was able to sleep at the academy because I rented a room out for free to a young couple. This was way before becoming an investor or having a rental at all. I was living in my single family house, rented a room out to a young couple with the caveat for free that they were live-in daycare, so my kids could be left alone. Got through a 6-month academy because I was house hacking. Millie, I'm listening at 1.5 speed, you're a man fast. Nice. So hopefully you get caught up eventually. Tom, and thanks for your service, vets. Good luck with the better VA loan offers nowadays. Yes, the VA loans have the option of getting accepted more. FHA and VA have a better chance now than they did for the last couple of years. Rob, that explains Vegas. Exactly. Cool name. Cool name. Howdy. Look up Uberman's sleep schedule. Tesla, as well as many others, have utilized this. Doing it is another story, I bet. Robert. The city requires rental property to be inspected every 3 years to get a certificate of occupancy. I have one city that does that every 5 years. They didn't care about it this last fall. Only reason why I'm concerned about it. So when they inspect, yeah, you might have to permit. The city also makes a lot of money from fining landlords. Yep. So you might end up having to deal with it. I would, in that case, since it's not adding living space and it's just a bathroom, I would wait until it's a them issue. Don't make it a them issue. Tom. Robert, I'm going through somewhat similar deal with county city permits, growing pains today, make it easier in the future. That's true. Another way to look at it. Last week was an awesome interview week for Michael Zuber. Grand Slam Sunday with Dave Bird was exceptional. Day to learn. I recommend watching their talk on market leading economy. Yeah. I try to catch as much of Zuber stuff as I can. I've got a couple of his stuff. I try to catch all of it, and then there's a couple. I think that's what Mike's goal is. He makes enough content where people can kind of pick and choose what resonates most with them. Robert, Tom, no problem. Nothing bad yet, but concerned because these guys were able to drive out Matt to his current market with their BS. Dividend Dave, oh yes. I remember you mentioning Munger and his thoughts on diversification and wealth, and I agree. Thanks. And then my chat moved, which is great. It means there's more chat. It's good because I'm hoping that this can last a while because we're only at an hour and a half. Tom Kine, I'm in a liberal state and just come to the understanding that they just want their kickback, but it's all good. So I used to, a long time ago, Tom, when I was educating myself on real estate, I heard almost everybody who produces content or was being interviewed say that they prefer to invest in red states, landlord friendly, whatever term you want to say. Uh, until I listened to both of Grant Cardone's interviews on BiggerPockets, and you can like Grant or not. I like his energy. I like his motivation. Right, not his investing style. It's not my thing. But and he did get started with single family, small multifamily before he got big too. But he said he prefers blue states because they limit building, and limiting building causes appreciation. So here's a quick, uninterested third party breakdown of how Washington looks. It's like 39 counties, could be 37. I don't know. My memory sucks. But like 38 of them are red, and then King County is blue, but high enough in population to make the whole state blue. King County had over 30% appreciation last year. Pierce County, Tacoma, where I'm at, had 24%. So limiting building can be contributed to causing appreciation. So there's an argument for both sides on where you want to invest. Robert, bars and casinos is good. I know one that does half off on Tuesdays. Big plate meal size, general, cauliflower, $7 healthy enough and cheap. Yeah, cool. Cashflow Johnny, howdy, real estate freak. Shar, howdy. Question, thank you. How much real estate have you sold in the metaverse? How do you know what to buy? So that's a hard question to answer because it wasn't called the metaverse. I was investing online in the 90s in a game called Ultima Online. And I made thousands of dollars over several, 3 or 4 years. Don't know how much I sold. It was probably in the hundreds because I would actually log into the game and buy a couple of houses from people who didn't know what they were doing and then sell them to people who wanted them. Sold a castle one time for $1,400. A virtual game castle that doesn't exist and doesn't do anything. So the metaverse is kind of new because there are people that are actually opening shops in virtual worlds where you can actually sell real products in those shops. So there is tangible money to be made. But in Ultima Online, property values could drop drastically, like 70%, because they double servers. So right now in the metaverse, what platform would you log in to buy and sell property on, and which storefronts is the one being used? And next month, they could drop to zero because a better platform comes out with a more interactive technology or a different setup or endorsed by the right, Elon Musk or somebody that says, oh, this is what we're going to use. And so all of a sudden, everything just drops to zero. So I haven't currently invested in the metaverse. I did it in the dinosaur days when it was much simpler and it was a side hustle. Good question, though, because it is going to be a thing. Tyrone, howdy. Can you speak to the expense ratio you use to help evaluate your multifamily deals? I've seen anywhere from 35 to 50%, but wanted to get what you've been averaging. So I don't use property management, so that would be something you would add to your equation. I self-manage. 16 rental units takes me about 2 hours a month, and it would cost me at 10%, $30,000 a year, basically $31,000 a year. For 2 hours a month, I'll make the 30 grand myself. But I do 10% for repairs and maintenance and 5% for vacancy. So when I'm running the numbers on buying a property, I'm setting aside 15% above principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. So I don't know what those would equal because then I'm looking at rents to get my yield. So I've never done it was worth this much, the rents are this much. And if I add principal, interest, taxes, insurance, and my expenses together, it's this percent of it. That's too much thinking. I have one equation. And here's the Cliff Notes version. I'll try to do this in less than 30 seconds. Annual profit divided by cost to acquire. Annual profit is what's left after principal, interest, taxes, insurance, and the 15% for repairs, maintenance, and vacancy, times 12 to get your annual profit, divided by cost to acquire, which is not just your down payment. That is down payment, closing costs, and immediate repairs. Don't count reserves because that's not an expense, but those three expenses all put together. What did it take to make the place rent ready? How much were my closing costs? What was my down payment? Divide annual profit by cost to acquire. That gets you a yield. In my market, I'm usually have been shooting for a 10% or better cash on cash return for year one. Usually it's above 20% by year three. So it gets better over time. Time is your friend in investing. So that's how I run those numbers. And even though I think the lumberjack landlord cheats at this, even though I have enough reserves and cash flow from other properties to where I could buy a property and not set aside 15% for repairs, maintenance, and vacancy to calculate the yield, I don't. I look at every asset as though that one had to produce 15%, which I've never in any year, even a year when I replaced the roof, come close to 15% of gross rents as an expense, right? I look at the property that I'm purchasing and I run those numbers to make sure it's a good deal. Even though once the reserves are full, that extra 15% doesn't go into the reserves, doesn't go into the emergency fund. It goes into the investing pile. It doesn't now spend more in my life because then when I spent my reserves, I would need to lose the quality of life to refill it, right? I want my investing to go faster when reserves are full. But if I ever have problems and I had to dip into reserves, then the 15% from gross rents goes into reserves to fill it back up without impacting quality of life. That was a great question. Thank you. Monica, howdy. How can I buy a triplex if I don't have the 25% down? Owner occupy. I can do house hacking because I can't do house hacking because the lender told me they can't excuse the fact that I'm moving from a house to a triplex in a worse area. Find a new lender. What makes them think it's a worse area? What metric are they using for that? Is it closer or farther from your work? And you're just using FHA, so you can do a non-FHA conventional loan, hunt for lenders to find probably not going to get as good as like 5% down, but maybe 10 or 15 on a triplex. And FHA is the one that worries about you going from a house to a triplex. Conventional loans, you can go from single family to fourplex to duplex to triplex to fourplex. It doesn't matter. Shop lenders, they're not all made the same. And as lenders are getting more and more hungry, they're going to care less and less. The FHA requirements can be a bit tricky, but try to have a story. Closer to work, closer to daycare. My daycare is closer than work is, so it cuts down my drive from my house to daycare to work. It has more bedrooms per unit than the house. It has it has better parking. It's closer to my mom's, closer to my doctor. Something that makes it a story that you can justify because the lender wants to lend the money. But FHA requirements and its guidelines is that it's not intended to be buying rentals. You can use it on up to 4 units, but it's not intended to be buying rentals. So you need to be moving closer to or into a bigger single family house, unless you have a justifiable reason. Find the reason, find a new lender. That would be my suggestion. Jimena, hola mija, ¿cómo está? Million. I was hearing one podcast and the guest lawyer stated that for 30-year fixed rate mortgages, if the bank wants, they can take it back. They have a lot of sections on the mortgage document. I would love to see a bank get away with that because once the note is recorded with the county, it's a financial note. It's a document. It can be sold. The lender can sell it to someone else. They can't take it back. But if there are people who have debt service loans or loans that are based on asset, non-QM loans that are based on the property that have those loan reevaluation periods, and yes, they have a lot of, you're not making enough money, we're going to take it back. But a residential loan in your name with 30-year fixed rate debt, I don't know that I've ever heard of a case where a mortgage lender could take the loan back. But fear gets clicks, so the video probably got looked at a lot. Yeah, there's no risk of that. Um, you can have an adjustable rate mortgage, and they can put in things where if the rate changes and you don't qualify or whatever, there's fear with adjustable rate mortgages that I would avoid. But 30-year fixed rate debt, because you're creating a financial note, the lender can sell it. The lender can, it's not, so they can't just call it back. And then Tom says that question and answer is definitely worth a like. And please remember that every time you hit the like button, an angel retires before Matt. Is I real? Hey Dion, thanks for all you do. Question: do you take optimistic rents or worst case when figuring for yield? 10% below area average. Example: similar property rent for 2.4, but calculate with 1.8. Is that too conservative? That would be a bit too conservative for me. Matt's the super genius here, so $240 less than 2.4. So what is that? 200 and $2,160? Not the math guy. Um, I would run it at 10% below area average, but I would calculate, how are you finding area average? Rentometer is usually off. I had a live stream a couple of weeks ago. I did on Zoom, so I actually shared my screen. Kind of hard to set that up, so I'm not doing it tonight. But if you go back in it was tenant flip setting rents. I actually pull up how I find area average rents. And then to calculate for a purchase, I go 10% below that. So 1,800 seems a bit low conservative for me. If it made sense, then you don't even talk to anybody, just make the offer. That sounds like a great deal. But if it makes sense at 2,160, if that math's even close, uh, that's what I would run it at. John T. Health, howdy. Oh, we are live. Hello from Canada. Howdy. We spoke before. I finally landed on a property. Awesome. So now I'm working on building finances back up for repairs, rentals, etc. Awesome. Continue to save, because as you save for repairs and renovations and that kind of stuff, every dollar that you save adds to the next deal for those things: closing costs, down payment, immediate repairs, reserves, the things it's going to take to make the next deal happen. And I am curious, you're investing in Canada. You guys have the 5-year or less adjustable rate mortgages. Um, let me know how that goes. Dividend Dave, Dan, you had mentioned that you tried spending money only to come back with more in your bank. Have you ever tried playing Brewster's Millions with all your income? It's not so much that it's all your income, it's that you I don't take a vacation to, I don't know, name an expensive country. Um, where is expensive? Canada. I don't go to Canada. I've been to Vancouver. It's real close. But I haven't gone to a vacation in Europe. I've gone to Colombia. I've gone to Thailand. Drove across the country here in the United States. So my cash flow is enough to where I can take a reasonable vacation and come home with more money than what I left with. But I haven't tried Brewster's Millions. Though the closest I come is in my will. I have 3 kids. Each one gets a third of the portfolio. Unless they spend a penny on their mother, then the other 2 get their money. So it's like the reverse Brewster's Millions, with a bit of bitterness. REI Stoners. I love that movie, Dave. It's a great movie. Eli, howdy. I'm a sophomore in college, but I'm looking to get into my first rental in central Pennsylvania. So I think it's where my dad's from. Would you recommend waiting until after I graduate or getting in now so I have more time? So do you have the ability to get in now? Do you have the down payment saved? Lenders are going to want consistent income unless you use a DSCR loan. What are you currently doing for housing while you're in college? If that's an expense that you can reduce or eliminate with a house hack, I would do house hacking. The sooner the better. So it's, if you have the ability to get into it, the sooner the better, because as soon as you can get rental income on your tax returns, there's 2 years where it's a little difficult to get into real estate, because lenders are generally, unless you're using a DSCR loan, they're looking at you saying, what's your credit score? What's your debt to income ratio? What's your actual income? Because this is how much we're going to be able to lend you. Once you have 2 years of rental income, debt to income ratio and salary almost disappear. Lenders have said the sentence: you can buy a place as big as you want, doesn't matter, as long as you save the down payment. That's all they're looking for. Do you have the down payment? And you can keep your credit score up. Because once you have rental income on your tax returns in some form, lenders will look at 75% of rents in your debt to income ratio. So if you're buying properties that actually cash flow, 75% is above and beyond principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. Some lenders will also want you to have at least 3 months remaining on leases, so it kind of eliminates some short-term rental stuff, but even that's being fixed. Oh, I would get into it sooner. And it's funny, every investor you talk to Matt the Lumberjack Landlord, you talk to Michael Zuber, you talk to me. I talked to Cody Davis of they have a YouTube channel, and of course, Cody and Christian, Multifamily Strategies. I interviewed Cody on this channel when he was 21, and he only had 80 units, 80. You know what he said? I wish I started sooner. It's normal for somebody my age to say, I wish I started sooner. I mean, I made it to 40 without ever having $1,000 in the bank. So I wish I started understanding money sooner. But Cody at 21 to go, man, I wish I just started sooner. Can't imagine where I'd be now. At some point, you're going to wish you started sooner. Sooner the better. Robert, this might sound weird. It'll sound weird when I say it. Because I'm always multitasking, this must be asked. How would you calculate multitasking time for rentals? Writing an email while watching something. Um, Actually, there have been studies done that humans can't multitask. Alux has a really good video on it. ALUX. I watch a lot of their stuff. So when you multitask, you're actually going to hurt something that you're doing. And if you're writing an email while you're watching something, um, no, I like deep work where you take a time and you say, okay, so I've got this many emails to go through. This hour has nothing going on but my emails. And you go and because it takes 2 or 3 to 5 minutes to get into a work mode, whether it is you're looking at properties, you're writing your emails, you're comparing your schedule to make sure you're not double booked, whatever task you're doing, right? It takes a little bit to get into it. Every time you're in the middle of something and you go to do something else, it resets that 5 minutes to get back into that mode. So I would block out more time for specific things, kind of like Michael Zuber talks about do the work, right? It's only 15 to 20 minutes a day to look at deals. That's your time that day. That's what you're doing. That'd be my suggestion. But that's a guy coming from, uh, memory issues who literally make everybody motion sick, I think, but has to do things like, hey, look, here's a post-it that says everything you're going to talk about. And there's a post-it down here that says it's Tuesday. It's on your live stream. Uh, yeah, I like to focus work. Let me see here. Lumberjack landlord. Love college students. My first 10 years, we were mostly college tenants. And I have a friend who invests here in Washington up by a town called Bellingham, right on the Canadian border, who solely rents to college students. And even in 2020 and 2021, never had a vacancy. There was a time when the college was shut down doing all remote, but the people still wanted the college experience. Rents by the room, and the turnover is expected, when they do their 2 or 3 years at the college or whatever. But the amount of money made is so much more by the room that it justifies the work that it takes. Bird vids. Seems like renting by the room could make good money if everyone can play nice together. Yeah, if you really want to rent by the room, so there's something I have never invested at a distance. So if somebody wants really good investing at a distance stuff, I say, Millennial Mike, here's his channel. Go there. He answered questions. He's super helpful, right? I don't tend to do very many product reviews. I'll do a video on here's the locks I use or here's the lights I use, right? But a product review, I don't do that stuff. I handyman to do. I'm way too lazy to do that kind of stuff. Lumberjack Landlord on his YouTube channel does some really good product reviews that I've actually liked, and just did a tenant flip where I took his information to do on the electric swap, right? So if you want to rent by the room and know the strategy to do it, to get people to play along well, to help limit tenant turnover, to how to do everything, Todd Baldwin here on YouTube. Baldwin, Baldwin, Baldwin. Yeah, probably like that. Has an amazing strategy on renting by the room. He literally buys in a very expensive market. He house hacks by the room. He's now house hacking a duplex. It's the first time that I think he's got a newborn, so or like a 1-year-old or something now. So he's uh, first time he's not house hacking with roommates. He's in one side of a duplex, but he's got great strategies on renting by the room. If somebody wants to do that, he's a great resource. Donnie, howdy. Do you know what the lowest amount most lenders will go towards an investment property? Any advice on getting a 30-year fixed rate single family house for 60,000? Generally, what I've heard is 75,000. I've heard some say 100,000, but 60,000, you might have to shop around a bit. You're going to have better luck with the local credit union than you would with a large, major lender or a mortgage company like Guild or Fairway. Um, yeah, I would try local credit unions when it's going to be an amount like that. That would be a challenge. Kevin, howdy. Thanks so much for doing this. Thank you. Have you heard any non-owner occupied, non-seller financed investment loan products where you can get 10% down? Several. Matt, the mortgage guy, had one he was talking about a couple of months ago. There are a lot of lenders that you have to lender shop, because what one lender says this week and what that same lender says next week is going to be very different. Lender shop, when you're looking at doing smaller down payments, again, that's something that sometimes tends to be easier with the smaller lenders like a local credit union. I've not had good luck with local credit unions, but a lot of people I work with have gotten way better deals with their local credit union than I have. But there are lenders out there, and they're not all made the same. Lumberjack landlord. I like the 40,000 spend to get 500 a month or 6,000 a year. It's a 15% return on capital, but you have to have a rent box you will get that return on. Unless the 40,000 gets you better return in getting another property. Right. So I don't look at it the same way, Matt. The 15% return is on an existing asset that was already going to appreciate and already experiencing tenant, principal pay down. So the internal rate of return is not as good. So I would want a bigger yield than I would if I was buying another property. Much bigger than just buying another property, because that's going to have a better IRR. But the $500 a month increase, from the way the question was formed, didn't sound like my tenant was empty and moved out, and because I did a rehab, I got $500 more. I think rents might have reset to a higher amount even without the rehab. If it meant specifically $600, $500 more per month because of the rehab, which would not be the case in my area. You can I'm telling you, platinum countertops or plywood countertops, it's going to rent for the same. Nicholas, any tips on mentally on handling the slow start of income snowball? 6 to 8 years seems so far away to cash flow enough. It is not a get rich quick scheme. It is a get wealthy for sure. The shorter the timeline, there's a couple factors. One, the greater the risk. If you're doing a whole bunch of deals, there's a reason why lenders look at your debt to income ratio and your salary for the first 2 years, because they don't want you to scale so fast before you realize you're doing it wrong, and you realize you're not calculating your yield right, and you don't know how to, whatever you're missing from your strategy that you don't know. But once you've been doing it for 2 years, you've consistently shown on your tax returns that you can get tenants, screen tenants, place tenants, collect rents, maintain properties. Now you're a safer bet. So there's some things in place to slow you down. But think of it this way. Yes, so here's the mental thing, because I think that was the way you formulated the question. Any tips mentally, right? You are going to be alive in 5 years. Like, it's going to happen, whether you invest or not. There are a lot of people who are just not investing, or they're putting into their 401k, which in 5 years makes no difference to their life because they're not 59 and a half yet, right? It has no impact on them. Or I purchased a duplex, and then I purchased a duplex. So I had house hacking, so reduced living, and then cash flow from a duplex and cash flow from a single house. Like, that was a massive change, but it took 4 years, right? But then it took another 4 years to reach financial independence, to where the income coming in was enough to where I really could just walk away from my job. Financial freedom happened at 12 years. And so 12 years, I have actually walked away from the job. Here's the word. Write this down. forever. We're not comparing. If you do this for 5 years, you get to live this way for 10 or 20. It's you do this for like 5 years, maybe 10 to get to where you're at. I started from a lot of bad debt, low income. So maybe your income's better. Maybe you don't have all the bad debt. So maybe you can get there sooner than I did. Once work is optional and you've diversified your portfolio and you've diversified your tenant base and you've got your strategies in place and you've gotten your amount of time it takes to either manage your tenants or manage your property manager down to the smallest amount forever. It's like the opposite of a life sentence. Like if you get sent to prison for 10 years, that sucks. You get a life sentence, that's life altering to the point where it literally changes the world for you. This type of freedom where you never have to work again alters the world for you. That's worth 5 years. That mentally got me through it. And really, the original goal was I still want to be a burden to my kids and I don't want to have to work. I'm going to take a quick poll because I'm going to be doing a video Thursday on the slides, if I don't die, talking about when to take Social Security. And it's actually because I watch a channel of a guy named Joe Kuhn, Kuhn. He actually probably is the reason I actually retired when I did. He gives great advice. He retired at 54. He's been retired 4 years. He used stocks and invest in the bucket strategy. So we're going to hopefully get together, collaborate, and talk about the different strategies for retirement. But watching his content actually kind of brought me mentally around to I should retire. But he talks about waiting to take Social Security till 60 at the retirement age. I'm going to explain why I'm going to do it at 62, which is still in the future, a ways. Further for Matt, but still a ways for me. And I'm going to use math to do it. So in the comments, let me know, when are you planning on taking Social Security if it's still around when you get there? Because, and you can leave a reason as to why too, but I'm going to have a reason I'm going to do a live stream on the slides on Thursday. Lewis, howdy. I have a seller finance deal balloon payment of $60,000 coming up in roughly a year. Besides doing cash out refi, what other tactics would you use to pay off the seller? I would ask the seller if they want to be paid off. Part of seller financing is to avoid large capital gains and to get consistent monthly income. They might switch it to fixed rate debt. They might push it back 2-3 years. Maybe they don't want the money all at once. Ask what matters to the seller. Cash out refinance, maybe home equity line of credit, depending on, especially if you've had appreciation for the last 2 years. Second, mortgage, if depending on how the first one was recorded. Because if it has to be paid off with a balloon payment, there's a couple of different options. I haven't done balloon payments on anything. So cash out refinance, home equity line of credit, adjusting with the seller, finding out what matters to them. That would be the tax that I look. The tracks that I tried would be that I would try the seller first, and then I would compare with the amount of money that you have coming in. Could you pay off a home equity line of credit faster, or would you want the fixed rate debt of a cash out refinance? Both of those rates are going to be elevated now compared to where they were a year or two ago. But I would do the home equity line of credit if I could pay it off quickly. I would do the cash out refinance if I wanted to have fixed rate debt on it long term. Robert, well, 12,500 got me a new boiler, so 28,000 isn't a gut rehab, but that was also oil to propane conversion. Yeah, so those are some expensive things that you're doing there for sure. A cost of living, yes, major remodel. With small kitchen, open walls, island, all new soft close cabinets, nice quartz, countertops, floors, new 6-panel doors, trim, new tiled bathrooms, B neighborhood, huge difference. I'll ask Matt. Thanks. Yep. Cool. And Matt will answer. That's awesome. And my chat moved, which I appreciate. Okay. Nicholas. Do you add fences between your duplexes? Yes. To give them more of a single family home? Yes. If it's a fenced property, I have two duplexes that don't have exterior fence. No, that one has actually, they have backyard fenced on one. So I have one duplex with no fences. But the rest I do. And there's one that complete backyard fence. I added a fence in the middle. I used Thumbtack to find a contractor, and I added a fence with a like a RV gate in the middle so that there was access. But I do. I like the idea of making it more like a house than a unit. The math in my head is from statistics of the average homeowner stays in their home 7 years. The average person in an apartment stays 2 years. So the more you make it like a home, the less turnover you're going to experience, which seems to be working for me. Million, he earns his like. Thank you. Only if I've earned it. If you hate it, let me know. Hit the down button twice. Like, really let me know you didn't like it. Ryan, howdy. Homeowner's exemption is available in Maine. It reduces the amount of you are taxed on for your primary residence. Not sure what other state it is available in. Cool. So yeah, I would let them know right away. Laura, can you elaborate how you set tenant communication plan with your lease? Do you have a list of what constitutes a non-emergency versus emergency? I have a needy tenant that called me about drops of dry paint on the wall. That was an 8 p.m. phone call. So the first thing I do is I let my tenants know that I never answer the phone. Hell, I let my friends know I never answer the phone. And I don't check voicemails because it's not 1984. Everything can be text unless it has these three words in it, Laura. And then you've probably heard me say this before. If the sentence you're going to use when you're talking to me, whether it's in text, email, or phone, is going to include the word fire, flood, or blood, you can call me. Educate them. It's not in my lease. In my lease, I say the forms of communication are, here's my email and here's my text. I will text people. I tell them I don't answer the phone, but you can text and you can email. If you text and it's something that's really trivial, I'll text back. If it's something needs repaired or some communication that could eventually be important, I'll shift it to email, because in a lot of states, which is like Washington, emails are admissible in court, texts are not. So have that conversation. I don't currently have it in my leases. I have had to educate tenants. There was a young couple that I had to go and literally sit down with them and say, here are things you can call me for, right? Have the conversation. Most times it's a simple conversation, at least signing, but this one was, I went back because they were calling me for trivial things. Educate the tenant, and remember this, at lease renewal. How many times did they call you for trivial things after you educated them? Tells you whether you want to renew that lease or not. So to answer your question, it's not technically in the lease, but I do have the conversation. Mike, howdy. Went and looked at a duplex, 5-bed, both side yesterday. All I can say is major wish pricing, asking $775,000. I ran the numbers. It is worth $495. Thanks to Three Amigos, I avoid that bear trap law. Okay, so 5 beds, both sides. Call your housing authority and find out what they'll pay for a 5-bedroom unit in a duplex. Joe Asamoah buys properties in Washington, D.C., and his housing authority pays over $5,000 a month for 4 or 5-bedroom places because they're super rare, and people usually don't put them on the voucher program, and the voucher program has people that qualify for that many bedrooms. They might pay $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 a month in rent per side, and now the 775 starts to look like it might make sense. Something to consider. Remember, there's 3 things. Price sounds high for a duplex, but you have to know your area. Rates, what are interest rates doing to the actual monthly payment? And rents, what can you get for a 5-bedroom in that area? And I would check with housing authority. For 2 and 3-bedroom, you can usually get more from people that are not on that voucher program. 4, 5, or 6-bedroom, the housing authority usually pays like way more than what somebody would pay to rent that place. Worth checking out. Also, you're right, could be wish pricing. Watch days on market. You might make an offer soon that makes more sense once you find out what your rents could actually be. Laura, yep, that was the pain one. Eric took a message back to make me lose sleep tonight and wonder forever what that was about. Any real estate CPA or tax preparer recommendations? I'm waiting to hear back on the Lumberjacks recommendation on Bob Langworthy, but do you recommend any? I do not. It's really weird. One of the things I like to do to try to reward people that I know, right, is referrals. right? So I have a handyman. I go into the local Facebook groups and I say, hey, this is the guy, and he charges great rates and he does great work. So this is my other guy. I've got a guy who is taking pictures of my unit for the tenant turnover that I'm doing right now. Great photographer, great price. I'm gonna push his stuff out. My agents, I connect people with my agents in the area. My lenders, I connect. So my bonus to knowing me is trying to get you referrals. My CPA doesn't want them. Like, what business model doesn't want growth? He said doesn't need any. And so whatever they've got going on, their docket is full. Um, so I actually don't have one to recommend. Using Matt, the Lumberjack Landlord's Guide might be one. Another one would be go to the BiggerPockets forums and look and read reviews and try to find one there. Cameron, thank you. Your videos make a huge hit closer to home. Thank you. That's awesome. Laura, Ryan, Florida also has a homeowner exemption on the primary residency tax increase cap at 3% per year. Nice. REI Stoners, this will show my age, but I finally figured out playback speed. That is hilarious. You're on helium at this speed. That's the way. So I usually do it if I miss a live stream in the beginning. I'll go in and I'll put it at 1.75 or 2 times to catch up, but only if I can actually kind of focus on what's being said. Andrew, howdy. Thank you for the live. Thanks for showing up. Lumberjack Landlord, I don't set aside 5% for vacancy because I've never had one. I've never had a vacancy either. I do 5% because there's going to be expense associated with a tenant turnover, which is a part of vacancy. Never had one for more than a few days. Yeah. And on expenses, I take the number from the previous year that we spent on all properties and divide by units. Smart. How would that look for me? Shoot. I'd have to know what I spent last year. Robert. Wait, really? I thought conventional Franny Freddie did care about going to duplex to triplex to four. So Fannie and Freddie will on FHA, but not so much on conventional. And there might be some lenders who tried to do that, but mine have never asked. Went duplex to fourplex, and it was nothing. They didn't even ask the question. It was further away from work. Bigger unit, but no one asked. Yeah, it's FHA that cares and VA that cares. They want you moving towards a single family or into a bigger single family, but conventional is never asked. Lumberjack Landlord, it's much lower than 10%. And then my bank carries that number instead of a bloated number, not based on anything actual. Right. And you're probably using that when you're looking at like getting lending. I'm looking at it as the asset itself. Is this one worth pursuing? And there is no right way, right? There's a right way for you, but there is no one right way. Robert, unless you are Rocket Mortgage, who didn't ask any questions about going from duplex to FHA, doesn't write loans 3 and above. Right. No, mine was. So the duplex was a Wells Fargo loan. The fourplex was. It was either Wells Fargo or it was when I made the switch to Fairway. I'd have to look at the documents. Million, you made it to the live chat, so I slowed down. I'm off helium. Angel, howdy. REI Stoners, Lumberjack. Did you take out 5% vacancy on your first property? I'm running my numbers with it. I did and still do. And it's not because of how long you're going to have a vacancy. It's because when you have a tenant turnover, you're going to have at least some paint fix, probably flooring, some minor repairs, a door here, something, and the 5% is enough to make sure that there's reserves being built for tenant turnover, not so much for the vacancy. Katie, howdy. Can you talk a bit about how to leverage debt, how to not over leverage yourself as a beginner? I'm open to using debt to get ahead, but debt will always scare me, which is good. Debt scares me too. I'm afraid I don't have enough. So when you're starting out and you're in growth mode, so there's different stages in our investing. I did a video with Cody Davis, and I talked about how if I was his age, I'd probably be more aggressive than him. You have a leveraged position. What percent are you leveraged? So if you're buying your first house and you use a VA loan and you finance 100% of it, you are 100% leveraged. If you use an FHA loan and you do 3.5% down, 96.5% leveraged, right? So you can kind of do the math real easy when you're starting out. I've not used my VA loan. Even on my first duplex, I did a 5% down conventional because I wanted an equity position and I wanted to keep my VA loan in my back pocket in case the perfect deal ever popped up and I didn't have the down payment for it. So I've always kept that VA as a reserve. I wouldn't want to do 100% loan to value. I am actually the cause of the 2008 housing crash, me personally. I purchased a house around 2000, 102% financed. The wrapped the closing costs into the loan, right? Refinanced later because I went through a divorce to pull out her equity to give her half. And if you know the story of my debt, you know how fun that was. So now the 2008 housing crash happens and I'm underwater. I owed more on the house than it was worth. That is over leveraged. I couldn't give the house away. If I wanted to sell it, I'd have to write like a $15,000 check to sell it. Like, sub to owner, nothing, nobody would buy it. Couldn't give it away. Stuck with the house. Luckily, because the housing recovered and now it's worth a ton of money and it's paid off and there's a tenant in there paying a ton of rent. So it all works out great. But over leverage to me would be if you had to sell the asset and you had to write a check to sell the asset, that's over leveraged. So if you bought it for 100% of the value and you financed 70%, that means you have 30% equity. When you go to sell a property, it's probably going to cost you 8%. You have lending fees, closing costs, some things you might have to cover. And as we swing from a buyer's market or seller's market into a buyer's market, the seller might be paying more for things like that. So if you're 100% leveraged and you want to sell it, you're going to cover that 8%, right? The seller pays the agent fees. So that's where a down payment helps. Appreciation helps, but can go away. Housing values can go down, right? They don't always go up. Especially if you look at certain areas, and instead of market wide looking at housing, you could have certain areas where it can be a 75% crash. So there, over leveraged is over leveraged. Over leveraged also means if you have limited salary and you buy a fourplex and two or three of the units are empty, you don't have the ability to pay the mortgage. That's over leveraged. So you want to have reserves, and as your portfolio size grows, you want your reserves to grow. Lenders will actually require that you have 3 to 6 months of principal, interest, taxes, and insurance sitting in an account. It could be a retirement account; they'll count half of that, but you have to have reserves in order to qualify for the next loan. So there are some protections in place to help protect the lender. But as an investor, you want to have those reserves because you want to be able to handle problems without having to go into bad debt. Bad debt is consumer debt, where you use credit cards, short-term debt with adjustable rates, like that kind of thing. Good debt is when you buy something where the something makes more money than the debt costs you and someone else pays off the debt. So to me, that's why I wish I had more, but I wish I had good debt, not bad debt. When I was growing my portfolio, my goal was to have about 70% leverage because that leaves a big enough gap to handle if I had to sell, whatever the reason is. Like, do something silly and go to prison, and you're going to be in prison forever. So you just have to sell everything. I'm not going to have to pay to sell the stuff. Right? There could be some weird reason why you have to sell. You would walk away with something if you were 70% leverage. There could even be a dip in home values, and you could sell and still walk away without having to write a check. I wanted at least 70% leverage because you gain appreciation on the value of the property, not just the amount that you put in. So if you put in $100,000 on a $400,000 property, you have 25% equity, right? So you start from a position of 25% equity. Next year, when the property values, if they go up 10%, you don't gain $10,000 on your 100,000. You gain $40,000 on the 400,000, right? The bank doesn't get the appreciation, you do, the buyer. So I want leverage, but I didn't want to be over leveraged. So my goal was to maintain a 70% leveraged position. So if I bought a property with a 20% down, I was starting that out as 20% leveraged, 20% equity. So I would be 80% leveraged. I'm over leveraged, right? So save for 2 years while appreciation happens and a principal pay down happens. So you're gaining more equity every month that goes by. You pay some of the mortgage down and there is appreciation. If prices go up, they can go down. So as that got bigger and my equity position dropped below 70%, I could then buy the next property and have more equity. But as the years go by, that first property, your equity position keeps getting bigger and bigger because, unlike some people who invest successfully, I have never taken out a home equity line of credit or done a cash out refinance or tapped that equity. My equity position got bigger and bigger. So I could buy the next property and still, even though I'm only doing a 20% down payment or could have done a 5% down payment, my overall leverage position on all properties was below 70% while I was growing my portfolio. As I got to the point of my cash flow is 5 times what it cost me to live. I'm probably going to be retiring. This is a year or so ago, maybe 2 years ago, thinking, hey, eventually I'm going to retire. Not knowing it was actually going to be about a month ago now that I actually did retire. I wanted like a 60 or a 50. I'm at 40% leveraged. I have $1.8 million in debt, which sounds like, how can you retire? You have so much debt. Well, the net worth is over 5 million. So there's over the value is over 5 million. So there's over 3 million in equity, right? So my net worth is over 3 million, but the cash flow is what I was focused on. The cash flow is 5 times what it cost me to live. I could sell everything, pay agent fees, and walk away with about $3 million. Taxes would make that interesting. So yeah. As you're closer to retirement, I think a lower equity position makes it easier to retire, more comfortable. In growth phase, I wanted to be closer to 70%, but now that I'm retired, 40%, I'm pretty comfortable. I might go up to 50 or 60, really wouldn't impact me much, depending on how it would impact cash flow. As long as I was increasing cash flow, I might do that. I might also, it's not always about growth. There are a lot of people who say, look, I have this many units. I'm amazing. I got to 5,000 because I'm in 7 syndications, right? And have no control over these or whatever. I have 16. I might sell my single family house because it's paid off, take the money and pay off 2 mortgages and reduce my equity position to even less than 40%, increasing my cash flow and decreasing the number of properties I need to take care of, manage, and tenants I need to take care of, right? I don't know that I'm going to do that. Doesn't make the most sense, but it's an option because I'm not trying to grow. That growth phase is very different, though. That's where you're saving every penny. You can recycle capital like Michael Zuber does or Matt the Lumberjack Landlord does, where you do home equity lines of credit, where you sell properties, or you do a refinance to take the money and buy more properties to get more units. They will scale faster and the hockey stick growth towards the end than I did. But my goal wasn't growth for growth. It was growth to be free. The free was the important part for me. Monica, howdy. What books or videos do you recommend to learn how to do seller financing? So, Racking Up Rentals is a podcast where he really talks about seller financing. And Jeff, I've met him. I should actually know if he has a book, but check out Racking Up Rentals, the podcast. Then there is Christian and Cody Multifamily Strategies. That's all they do is seller financing, and Cody has over 100 units. I think Christian has like 90 something units now, all seller financing. Their content, their course is about seller financing. I'm actually going to be taking their course to do a review, and I'll let you know what I think. If it sucks, I will tell you. If it doesn't suck, then we'll tell you. I will make sure I don't drink a lot of water when I take their course, though, because I want to give a nice water sober review. Books on it, though, I don't know, but I would watch all of their content. Yeah. So I don't have any specific books on seller financing. I haven't gone that route yet. CJ, howdy. When tracking income expenses, do you count a down payment, inspection, etc. on your expenses? Well, it's part of the cost to acquire. Does go into the expense column. So for buying a new property, or do you keep rental expenses and income separate until acquired? So those are separate from expenses as far as being a rental. My rental income doesn't calculate the down payment in my monthly expense. I'm trying to think if I understand the question right. I use it in my cost to acquire when I'm calculating the yield, right? That down payment, closing costs, immediate repairs, which closing costs and stuff includes the inspection, the appraisal. That's calculated to figure out the yield. Yes, so I do that. I'm trying to think of buying a new property, or do you keep rental expenses and income separate until acquired? Now, to calculate the yield, you start from every penny you're going to spend to get the property. When I'm figuring out the cash flow, not the yield, but how much it's going to cash flow every month, that doesn't include the down payment. That doesn't include the inspection. It includes each month. What are my recurring ongoing expenses that I'm going to have every month? The gross rents and any income if you had like a laundry or whatever, minus those expenses. That figures out your cash flow, but not your yield. Yield is annual profit divided by cost to acquire. Cash flow is monthly income minus monthly expenses. And the down payment's not a monthly, it's a month, that month you buy, but not monthly expense. I think I understood the question right. Is that real? So security probably won't be around for me. Exactly. Robert, when to take Social Security? Won't be around for me 100%, and I hope it's gone by then anyways. Nice. If they stop taking it, if it's gone by then. Ronald, howdy. If it's still around, I'll hold off as well. Okay, good. So Ronald, do me a favor. That's kind of the answer I was looking for. When you see my video on Thursday, watch for it. It's going to be so security, but when. I think that's the title I'm going to use. Unless I come up with something or somebody tells me something that would get more views. Because remember, title gets views. Even if the content is good or bad, the title gets you there. Dawn. Poll, Social Security at 62. I'll be damned if I'm going to die before I get any. Exactly. Cool. Levi. Social Security won't be there for me, but if it is, I'm taking it immediately to invest. It's better and to make sure I actually receive it. Oh, you just changed how I'm actually going to talk about it. The opportunity cost too. That was one I hadn't had on there, Levi. So if I remember, I will try to put your name in the video. Thanks. And I like it when I hit mute to cough or sneeze, and then I forget to take mute off and talk for five minutes. I keep thinking my voice is back, but it's been a rough week. Can you imagine being me, the talker, and losing your voice? Oh, it's rough. Chris, howdy. Tom, so today's inflation basically from tremendous spending by Congress. Any idea how the Inflation Reduction Act may pass could increase inflation again? I'm pretty sure it will, because the idea was free money. People spent it, which increased the cost for things. I think the idea of giving out money even selectively to people means people are going to spend, which causes inflation. But I get this. I get this sucks. If you're starting out and you haven't got that first or second rental and you need to buy that, inflation sucks. But here's why I want you to get that first, second, third, fourth rental. Once you have 4 or 5 cash flowing assets, maybe even 3, inflation is awesome. Yes, it sucks. My property taxes probably doubled. My insurance probably went up 50%. My rents doubled easily in 2 years. We saw easily. I didn't personally double them on my tenants. I did the binder strategy in 2021 and saw increases of 20 to 28% at tenants' request. But every time I have a tenant turnover now, and I'm not actually raising the rent on an existing tenant, it's a 2-bedroom that's renting out for over $2,000, where rents in that area 2 years ago, a 2-bedroom would be $1,300. Inflation is awesome if you're in the right position. So my goal to create this content is to help you get into the right position to where you can have like Michael Zuber's shirt. I used inflation to get rich. Ask me how. I want to make all of you that person. Million. Social Security as the earlier as possible. Yep. Mackenzie. Howdy. Can you explain one more your exact order of buying your properties in which you house hacked? At what specific point did you start feeling the income snowball really kick in? I am currently on my second house hack. Congratulations. Cash flowing $1,500 total. But all of that is going straight to the CapEx fund to speed it up until it hits 10,000. Then all of it will go toward funding the next deal. So the next property. It sounds very similar to mine. So here's the Cliff Notes version. Start to now. Own a single family house. So that's the one thing I did have that was a good start. I was underwater. I owed more than it was worth, and had an adjustable rate mortgage. So like I said, I was the cause of the 2008 housing crash. Luckily, when the rate made my payment go up like 50%, I was able to refinance into a fixed rate loan. Uh, so I didn't lose my house. I didn't become one of the foreclosures, but I was like this close. Um, had a single family house, moved into an apartment, rented it for 2 years. So for 2 years, I saved the down payment and got rental income on my tax returns because I rented the house out. Bought the duplex. For 2 years, I saved and got the next duplex. So that first 4 years was save, save, buy a duplex. Save, save. This was when I started house hacking. Save, bought another duplex. So in 4 years, I had two duplexes and a single family house. Then about a year and a half later, I bought another duplex. So at this point, I had four properties. And in between 2013 and 2016, mortgage lenders were letting you have four loans in your own name. I figured the banks had smart people working there with mountains of data, and they were smarter than me. So four mortgages made sense to them. That was the safe bet. So I thought four was good. Interest rates were above 6%. Some higher loans. I would say crappy loans, but they were just high for the last 2 years. They were really high, right? So I had a high rate. So what I did then is I focused, and it took about a year and a half. I focused every penny that came in from rents and everything from overtime and everything from side hustle into paying off the single family house. It hit both the income, the debt snowball, and the debt avalanche. It was my highest interest rate loan and my lowest mortgage value. So I paid it off. Then I saved for about another year. So now we're at about the 8 year mark, 2018, 19, end of 18, 19, by the fourplex. The fourplex is when income snowball kicked in and blew my mind. So at the 4 units, four rentals, 7 units, with the house paid off, I reached financial independence. My income coming in was about my profit after principal, interest, taxes, insurance, and setting aside for repairs, maintenance, and vacancy was about $2,700 a month, which doesn't sound like a lot, right? But I was living as a single parent with three kids as a police officer, making $2,600 take home while I had a mortgage. Now I was making 2,700, and my housing payment had dropped from 1,500 a month down to 300 a month. So could have walked away from work, wouldn't have lived very comfortably, but would have been fine. Buy the fourplex. I've only house hacked twice. Moved from the duplex to here. Duplex goes from costing me 300 a month to making at that point 800 a month. Now it makes like 1,200 a month because the binder strategy last year, beginning of this year. Moving to the fourplex, first year there, it makes 1,700 a month with me living there. Now it's making 2,500 a month because I'm living there. I rent out a room in my unit. And binder strategy on the other things. Then I bought out at a triplex and then a duplex. And both of those were 11 months, 7 months apart to that. And then since last year, I've been saving, and now I'm not sure which one I'm going to buy next. I've been looking for a fourplex over $1 million. Now that I've retired, I don't know. I'm not looking to add more units. I might instead buy a duplex all cash. So that's 6 years. It takes time. It just feels like it's going forever. But those 5 years are going to happen anyway. So now you get to the point where you're at, where you have some cash flow, you have a couple of units. I've only house hacked twice. If you house hack again, it would even make it go faster because you could do a lower down payment and a better interest rate. But moving twice was enough for me. Well, 3 times because I moved to the apartment, to the duplex, to the fourplex. I might do another house hack. I might use my VA loan eventually and buy something else. Don't know. The financial freedom thing happened, which is very different than the financial independence thing. So I don't know that I need to add any more. Ronald, I know you don't like 401ks, but my company matches 50 cents for every dollar I invest up to 20,050 max. Would you recommend leaving the 10 to so match? So I would do the match, whatever the match is, but they're matching 50%. So I'd have to do the math and see if that's right. Mine was a 1-for-1 match up to 3% of your income. So I would do 3%, which wasn't the max of the 401k. But if they'll do 50%, I would do the math. Most people say the math says to contribute for the match. But you are right. I don't like 401ks. So if you do that, then you can count that as a reserve. 50% of that will count as your reserve. So you don't have to save up so much money every time you do a purchase, because normally you have to have down payment, closing costs, repairs, and reserves. Well, if your retirement account takes out the reserves, you can get properties quicker. Um, but I would still have some reserves because things do pop up and you don't want to have to tap the retirement account. I would probably contribute for the match. Tom, Dion, thanks for sharing your time, knowledge, and advice and being objective. You too, Matt. Exactly. Jack, howdy, howdy. Your strategy is 15% of rents going to reserves for vacancy and repairs. How big of a reserve account do you have per property? Or do you have a large slush fund for vacancy and repairs? The second one, it's the slush fund thing. And then your question goes on. I remember you saying that you have a single bank account, one checking account, one saving account, one credit card. In this case, how do you earmark or allocate the pile of cash for reserves? And at what threshold do you start putting the extra 15% of rents towards future investments? There's a great question. And there's a video on my channel called How Much in Reserves? Here's the Cliff Notes version. When I had 7 or less units, so I had 4 properties or less, I kept $10,000 in a reserve. That would handle a roof replacement, a water heater breaking, a tenant not paying rent or a month or two, right? It would handle the basic things that can go wrong. Once I had more than 7 units, so Murphy's Law says it's going to go wrong if something can't. Murphy's fourth corollary says if a sequence of events can go wrong, they will, and in the worst possible order. So when I had more than 7 units, enough things can go wrong at the same time. That $10,000 wasn't enough. I used nice round numbers. I wasn't using math of 4% of gross value or X amount per property. It was just 10,000 when I had 7 or less. When I went above 7, I raised the threshold to 30. I kept $30,000 in a reserve. That would handle a couple of roofs, a couple of water heaters, several tenants, several months, right? So I could handle the emergencies. While working, I had, in the beginning, my W-2 job I was making $17 an hour. It slowly went up, and in about 2018 started being a 6-figure job. But for the first 8 years, it was a lot less than that. So while working, 30,000 was enough. Not working, I want what a lot of people call a SWAN account. Sleep well at night. I want enough money in an account to where I'm not nervous about tenants not paying. I'm not nervous about a foundation issue popping up or a couple of problems popping up. So I raised the 30,000 to 50,000. When I had 7 units, everything above 10,000 needed to be being put to work to make more money. When I had up to 16 units and a job up to 30, everything above 30 needed to be put to work, making me more money. Now that I'm not working, everything above 50,000 needs to be put to work, making me more money. Now, that is a reserve, which means there's money in my account there, and it's just one account, right? All the money's in there. There's a saving account, right? That goes in there. So my checking, I just keep enough to where if it ever got hacked or whatever, I'm only going to lose that amount. 2 or 3 times what all of your mortgages are. So it just auto pay on your mortgages. You're never waiting for rent to come in to make a payment or having to even think about when that's going to happen. But the reserves, the 50,000 in the savings is in my head. So every time I spend money, the rents fill it. So it's several $100,000 now looking for the next purchase. In order for rents to have to be put into the reserves, I would have to spend so much that I'm always willing on the next purchase to take everything in the saving account except for the reserve to purchase the next property. There was a time I actually used the reserve to purchase a property. When I was buying the fourplex, I actually dropped down to $200 in my both accounts, checking and saving together was $200. And at that point, I had money locked away in a retirement account. Like I said, you can use it for a reserve. I have since emptied it because in 2020, you could empty them out. But I did that because I had a decent job. I had the cash flow from properties and the way rents work. I closed on the 6th. That meant I got that month's rents, and you don't have a mortgage payment the next month. So I got the rents for the next month on the fourplex. So I had over $10,000 in the account for that property in the next month. That's the only time I would recommend, when you have the cash flow and the stability in your job, to have your reserves go that low. I had credit cards with balances. I had the retirement account I could tap. I don't know that I would do it again, but it was a great deal at the right time with the right price with the right yield. um, that that property kicked in the income snowball. Um, Definitely wouldn't do that in the first 2 or 3 deals, but in the next 2 or 3 deals, if you know what you're doing and you have your basics down, worked out great. Okay, I was going to say there. That's how my reserves work. Tom, on Sunday, Mike and Dave talked about the Fed pivoting around September and then start raising rates. Do you think the market will shift back to sellers again? Um, yes, if the rates go down, it could shift back to sellers. It could be a little more balanced. I don't know that rates will drop enough. I heard them talk about that in the video too. I have a dollar bet going with Matt and Mike that interest rates were going to go up because we were going to have inflation. And we made this bet, I think, around October, or when was it? It was like March 10th. I think it was the actual date in the Three Amigos on March 10th, I think. We made the bet, and I said interest rates are going to go up because they want to curb inflation, but they're going to realize that inflation didn't happen this time because of low interest rates. That's historically what causes inflation. Companies can borrow money, so they grow. That's not what caused it. We had helicopter money with stimulus, extended unemployment, extra unemployment. We had people that could make $75,000 a year staying at home that had to be bribed back into the workplace. So we have wage inflation. We had the Great Resignation, where over 4 million people per month were quitting their job, but unemployment was less than 4%. So that meant that people weren't quitting their job and going on unemployment. They were quitting their job and getting a better paying one. So we have record wage inflation, which is causing inflation. So interest rates were going to spike. Inflation is going to continue to go up. I think it's going to stick around in the 8 to 9 mark. I don't see it going down. I don't see it going much higher. Not an economist. This is just an absolutely uneducated estimate, right? But I was willing to bet, a dollar each, which could break me, um, that they would then lower rates because they fear deflation more than they fear inflation. Because remember, inflation helps the Fed. Even astronomical inflation helps. It doesn't help people stay in office. But the government is in massive debt to the Federal Reserve Bank, which is not federal, not a reserve, and not a bank. So they have a great branding um, marketing team. They owe the money, and the more inflation there is, the easier it is to pay off debt based on old dollar values. So they shoot for a 2 to 3% inflation every year. So high inflation is helping them. High inflation is helping people who own assets. People who are in debt, it's easier to pay off the debt because rents go up, but the mortgage stays the same. But high debt, above 5%, 6% is so bad that people in office won't be in office long. So they don't want it, even though it's good, healthy for the government. I'm from the government. We're here to help. Scariest words ever. So I predicted that interest rates would come back down to 3.5. They hit back down to 4 recently. Rates compressed because they did two 75 basis point increases, which everybody's like, oh, mortgage rates should go up. Well, no, lending fear went away because they knew that the Fed was serious about trying to curb inflation, so they were able to compress their margins. Rates came down. If it gets back down to 3.5, I win the dollar from each. I don't know that I'm going to. I think I said by the end of 2022, which was too short a time frame. I think they're going to go up a little bit more and they'll come back down in the next year or two. We might see them that way to try to stop deflation. But I do think that they're right. If by September inflation hasn't come down enough, so there's the thing where if inflation comes down, interest rates might come down, and then it's a seller's market. If inflation keeps going up, they could lower rates because they realize it's not the thing that caused inflation. And companies have to be able to get people back into the workplace. That could cause rates to come down too. Absolutely uneducated. That's all above my head. Kyle, howdy. What do you mean if your retirement account gets the reserves, you get properties quicker? So let's say you want to buy a property and it costs $100,000. You need to save up a down payment. So if you're buying an investment, that's 25,000, right? So let's say 20% down. So it's $20,000. Well, you're going to have closing costs. So title fees, recording fees, inspection, appraisal, all the closing costs, we'll say that's $5,000. So now you're at $25,000. then you're going to have to fix the place up to rent it out. So that could be anywhere from $1,000 to $10,000. So we'll say $5,000 again. So now you're at $30,000 to buy this property. The bank is going to want to make sure they're going to require that you also have reserves. You have to have enough money. The lowest I've ever heard is at least 3 months of principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. So if your mortgage payment is $1,000 a month, they're going to make you have $3,000 in reserve. So that's a low amount. But if you're buying a $700,000 house or $500,000 duplex or whatever, the reserves is 3 months of your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. So to save up the down payment, the closing costs, the immediate repairs, and the reserves all adds up really quick, right? So if you're looking for deals and you find one, but you don't quite have enough reserve, they can look at your retirement account. And if you have $20,000 in your 401k, 50% of that will count as a reserve, because if you took it out, you'd pay taxes and you'd pay a 10% penalty, leaving usually 50% of what's left. So maybe it might be a little bit more, but they'll recognize 50% as a reserve. So now you're going to save the down payment, the closing costs, and the money for immediate repairs. And you're going to show the bank that you have a retirement account with this much money. So you don't have to actually physically have another $5,000 to $10,000 sitting in your account that you had to save up to buy the next deal. Makes it go a little bit quicker because you don't have to save up so much. Might not be the best strategy. You're safer if you actually save the reserves, but showing the retirement account, like me, allowed me to buy a property I didn't have the money for. I mean, it took me down to $200 in my account to buy the fourplex, which added $800 a month from the duplex because I moved out and was able to rent out the other unit, and $1,700 a month in cash flow at the fourplex. So I added $2,500 a month to my income because I moved across town, because I was willing to drop down to $200 in my account and show the reserve as my retirement account as a reserve. Which, if I didn't do that, I wouldn't have had the money to make the deal happen. So happened sooner, able to make the deal, actually able to make the deal happen at all. That's what I meant by that. PJ, Dion, I purchased a property with my home equity line of credit for $32,000, putting about $30,000 into it, doing all the rehab myself. It should be worth at a minimum $120,000 when done. I plan to refinance it and pull cash to pay off the home equity line of credit. Would you pull out more and reduce the cash flow to put into another deal, or leave as much equity in as possible? So you're basically talking about a BRRRR method. You used your whatever financing to purchase it and fix it up. Now you can pull money out. I would definitely pull the money out with fixed rate debt to pay off the home equity line of credit. There are different ways of looking at it. Matt and Mike would probably pull out enough to where they still made some money, if they can do it with no money in the deal, and then put that money to work somewhere else. The question for me is, do you have a somewhere else to put the money to work where it's actually going to be a return that justifies the debt on the new something else and the added debt to the existing asset? I haven't done that. I prefer to save a down payment and buy a property. Both are viable, but make sure you don't do what Michael Zuber did on his first property on Norris Drive, where he took out money to buy 2 other rentals, but then his first one, even rented out, was losing money every month. He calls it an alligator. I think if you looked at all 3, he was net positive, right? So it kind of still made sense, but I've not done that. I've not taken out any equity to buy something else, because you're creating 2 debts. You're creating the debt on the existing asset and the new one. So do you have a deal? Not in my area. I think I could find. I mean, do you have an actual property you think you can make an offer on that would be accepted at the right amount to where it made a return on that property, even counting the debt on the existing asset? If that exists and you're confident in your ability to get it, maybe. Julie, howdy. Gave my contractor a stack of 20 American Eagle silver to thank him for a job well done. 3 units renovated. He hugged me. He was thrilled. That is awesome. I had somebody give me a stack of silver for something too. I've got it here, actually. I forget what it was for, but I was happy too. It was weird. It's like, oh, this is a great tip. I'm probably never going to sell it, but it's going to sit there and I'm going to talk about it. That's cool. That is something. If you have something cool like that and you have a contractor and you could say something like, I know that you said you get this done by Thursday, but I understand you're super busy. If you get this done by Thursday, here is these silver things I'm going to give to you. If you get it done next week, every day that goes by, I take one of these out of the container. PJ, yeah, that was the second part of your question. Derek, howdy. Question for everyone. I'm so eager to buy another rental, but don't really have enough money down. Should I max out a HELOC or wait for lower prices? Back the video up 3 minutes and listen to my answer for PJ, because it was pretty much the same thing. My brother used a home equity line of credit to reach financial freedom. He had his house paid off, took out a home equity line of credit, bought a rental, falling down mobile homes in the middle of nowhere. They call it on acreage, but yeah, it's out there a ways. And then he's a craftsman. He fixed them up, turned them into great rentals, and he did that 10 times. Has 10. He did it actually like 15 times, but went through a divorce and he ended up with 10. Um, they have very different stories of how that went, but 10 paid off with his home equity, then paid off the home equity line of credit every time he reused it. The question goes back to, do you have a deal that justifies the debt on the new asset and the debt on the asset that you're adding the debt to? Uh, I probably wouldn't do it on first, second, or third deal because that tends to be when we make our biggest mistakes. I wouldn't borrow against my 401k. I wouldn't empty out my 401k to buy the first or second deal because we tend to make so many mistakes you could lose it all. Put things at risk that shouldn't be, like your primary residence or your retirement account. Once you have 2 or 3 deals and confidence in your ability to actually say, this is how you calculate, I came really close to what I actually expected to happen. I can find a tenant, screen a tenant, place a tenant, maintain a property, find a handyman, a contractor, pay my bills, taxes, get everything set up. Then on that third or fourth deal, now I might put something at risk like the home equity line of credit or retirement account or borrow against it. Hope that makes sense. Not a starting out strategy, but maybe a good strategy. William, howdy. You have 45,000 I owe in loans in your name for a small business. I have 30,000 saved towards a rental payment in excess of my emergency fund. Should I knock out the debt or keep saving for the rental? There is a video on my channel called Pay Off Debt or Invest. Here's how I looked at it. I took and split the money down the middle. All of the money coming in. So you have a certain amount of money that comes in to pay, like you have to have this to live, right? Housing, food, transportation, healthcare, whatever, right? You have expenses like entertainment that you can control. You can eliminate some things, a latte factor. Hopefully you can house hack, whatever you can do to eliminate those. But it costs you a certain amount to live. What's left, you can save to invest. If I had a debt that had an adjustable rate interest or was above 6%, I took half of my what you would call disposable income to pay off the debt. The other debts got the minimum payments. Half went into the fund to invest to house hack. Once I house hacked, I house hacked and then 2 years bought the duplex, then pretty much the income snowball starts to kick in and I eliminated all the debt. But in the beginning, I was more worried about any debt with percent interest because that is a guaranteed return on your money. Where when you buy a rental, I'm shooting for a 10, you might be shooting for a 7 or a 15, who knows? But it's guaranteed if you pay off the 6% or higher debt. The lower ones, it's better to get the return on an investment, then use the cash flow from the investment in the future to pay off the debt. The most important thing is don't create more debt unless it's debt that's going to create income. So no more credit card debt, no more car loan debt, no more student loans, those kind of things. Something you're going to buy an asset where the asset produces income that not only produces cash flow, gets you a good yield, but someone else pays off the debt. Price and Pride. Howdy. I might have missed this before, but since you self-manage, what software do you use to streamline the application and daily management? I've Ale and Cozy come. Apparently, I need some more water. It's my water flask. I've seen Avail and Cozy come up a lot. Have you tried them? I used Cozy, which was then purchased. It was cozy.co because it was a Canadian company. It was then purchased by apartments.com. So I have used apartments.com. I'm currently trying out Hemlane, which has a multi-tiered system where your first level you can advertise on 30 platforms. I think it's 29, but it's like almost 30. Everything but Craigslist, I think. You can collect rents. They have a middle tiered system where I think on the first one you can have to check. I'm going to make a video on this on what the 3 tiers are. You can dispatch your handyman from a portal on the website and get emails to say what's going on. There's a middle one where you can use like an Angie's List type version where Hamlane gets the contractors out there themselves. And there's a third tier where they actually send leasing agents out to sign leases for you. So there's like, depending on how hands off you want to be, Hamlane has a tiered system that you can do. So that's what I've done basically as apartments.com up until now. I don't really use any other software for tracking expenses. I have an Excel spreadsheet. I have my entire business fits in here. I think if you're new, if anybody wants me to explain this, let me know. If not, I will leave it out of the video. And someday I will explain the dating book where I keep track of, well, not today, but if you want to know breakdown on the book that actually handles the management of rental properties, I could do that too. So it doesn't actually take a lot of software and it can go everywhere I want. That ADU guy. Howdy. Always a great show. Thanks. That ADU. Every time I see you mentioned on here, you have my phone number. Text me. Let's set up a time because I have not done the ADU thing and I want to have an expert come on here and share that information. If you haven't gone to that ADU guy's YouTube channel, it's really hard to find. It's on YouTube. It's called That ADU Guy. He's got great content on some awesome strategies and some things where he actually educated Michael Zuber on a couple things like building a 2 or a 3 bedroom ADU might not have the ROI of building a 1 bedroom ADU. The ROI was better. And he actually explained it much more understandable than that. Words are hard. Kyle, yes, please explain the book. Okay. So some people have a vision board. This was my idea for a vision board. So like a whiteboard, I thought originally my vision board, I thought I would go, here's a picture of my rental and then maybe pictures of how many I wanted, right? And have a whiteboard that I wanted to fill. But I want like all the information in one spot and I travel a lot. And my goal is to travel more. So I made a vision book. So it does 2 things. 1, it tracks everything in my business. And 2, it motivates me. I will explain that in a minute too. So each property gets 10 pages. So each 10 pages is blocked off for a property. So it'll have the property, it'll have like the loan number, the insurance number, the book, the codes are in to change the locks. I usually have the key taped here, but I think I lost this one or threw it away or something. But the 10 pages is to then record what is the mortgage, what is the payments. This was refinanced to a better rate, when it was refinanced, when was the refrigerator replaced, when was the roof done, when was major repairs done, so that I can literally, I don't have to tell somebody, go find a thumb drive, put it on your computer. Hopefully it doesn't get a virus. Hopefully, whatever, send me whatever information I need for this. I can actually say, go grab the book on my desk, look up the vehicle duplex and tell me what's the insurance policy number or whatever, no matter where I'm at, if I'm in another country. I'll probably take it with me if I go to another country. But the motivation comes from, there's a lot of 10 pages and I've only got 70 marked off, right? I wanted to fill it. That was my motivation in the beginning. So the dating book is not getting an explanation because those pictures can't be seen on YouTube. Only Homes, need to make an Only Homes account. I also have a spreadsheet, which if I was using Zoom, I would share it. It's very kindergarten simple. And one of my recent live streams, I forget which one it was called, but I'm pretty sure I have the ability to look that up right now. I broke down the spreadsheet, which I could do that again. I should probably just make a video so I can reference it, like a short one. Because I know the live streams, even though I go check out this live stream from this week, it's in the first 10 minutes, right? Whatever I'm talking about, maybe 20. But it says 3 hours on the video. Who wants to click on a 3-hour video unless you have that, like, I'm on a long drive, I'm mowing the lawn, I'm going to listen to this long thing. And someday I am going to figure out how to take this content out and put it into a podcast. So if you're listening to this on Podcast World in the future, nice to meet you. You didn't see me wave. Mackenzie, Dion, I appreciate your high quality feedback. Thanks for donating your time to help answer. I'm super happy to do it. Hoping it helps somebody, maybe 2 somebodies. Neo Collective. Howdy. With that map being the book, you should dress like Henry VIII. I actually have, I don't know if I have that available. Here's behind the scenes information that some people know. I am an ordained pirate minister. And if anybody in or around Washington is getting married, I do weddings for free. I don't charge. Um, you just have to be okay with a pirate coming. But I guess I don't. There we go. That is my marrying and burying clothes. If you want me at your funeral, that's what's showing up. But if you want me at your wedding, I do them for free. Eye patch goes back and forth though. Yes, that is the Grand Grimoire, actually. Nice, good eye. Cool name. Thank you for that. Ring Seeker. Howdy. Which country are you planning to travel to next? Ironically, my brother and I, so we went to Colombia together 2018, then we went to Thailand together 2019, and then 2020, nowhere. 21, we did the month around the country. This year, in 2021, we had planned Russia. But sometimes plans change. So I don't know. Maybe Brazil. My brother, he's weird. He did a roof on his rental. Like he did the roof. No, thank you very much. He's bigger. He's a big guy too. He's like 6 something. I don't know. He didn't go through his roof, but he could have. He does his own roofs because roofers don't do it right. He's that guy. He's got great skills, but he got all that. I got all the lazy. I don't want to trade. He's doing a roof on a rental. So he did one. He's doing another when he's done. Then we're going to go on a trip. Just don't know where yet. I think Brazil. I think so. I do have several clips of the weddings in some of my earlier videos. No, because it's in the resume video. But I'll put some of those in there again. I'll put that back up. Yeah, I do enjoy those. Nicholas, Only Homes. You got that. I actually have a logo too. Kyle, I love how you run this business and keep things so simple and yet very detailed. You're the type of investor that I aspire to be. Awesome. Thank you for the compliment. I'm so grateful. I found your content. Keep doing what you're doing. Thank you. I'd like to hear that because I don't want to be the, can you do me a favor and hit like, and hit subscribe and hit the notification bell and like ask for something like that and everything. Every now and then I try to sneak in the little words above my head that just go, hey, did you hit the like button? Or make the joke that, every time you hit the like button, an angel retires before Matt, right? Like get, that kind of stuff in there. But this channel isn't growing very fast, right? So I've got this, I'd like this, if I can just help this number of people, it'd be great. But when someone says, like, you're helping me or I got this rental or whatever, like I did this a while ago. I'm scaled back on this because I'm trying to have time freedom, but I used to take, a lot of phone calls and go have lunch meetings and everything. And I met this one guy. And the reason I'm scaling back is because I think at least half of the time was wasted by people who just never took action. They're like, oh, he'll talk to me. He'll meet me for lunch. Sure, let's go do it. But they're never going to do it. They didn't even want to be investors. They just thought I could do this. I met this one guy, Zhao, and he's from China. And I had the meeting and I really thought he was going to do nothing. Like it was just, he didn't ask the right questions. He didn't take any notes. He didn't seem to be paying attention. I think there's a language barrier that I wasn't aware of because he speaks really good English, right? Didn't hear from him again for like 6 months. Go to the local meetup that we put together here in Tacoma. So if you're on Facebook, Tacoma FI, we meet up once a month. Zhao shows up. He sits down at the table. He goes, hey, Dion, I haven't seen you for a while, but I got my first duplex. I'm house hacking. I bought this other one. I bought these two at a distance. So what am I doing next? And I was like, you mean it's actually turned into something, right? So that makes it worth it. So yes, I would like to see the channel grow. But when you say things like how I've helped you or what you're doing that I've helped with, it actually means something. So I appreciate that. Nicholas, how many more dollars do you plan on getting now that you're retired? Also, do you have any plans on relocating to another state? I don't plan on relocating to another state. I might snowbird, maybe. It seems like everything in the country is trying to kill you, except in Washington. We don't have the poisonous snakes. We don't have the poisonous spiders. We don't have earthquakes. We don't have tornadoes, hurricanes, all the issues that you hear about everywhere. I grew up in the desert, so I'm a fan of rain. So I wish it rained here more, actually. I joined the Marines to get out of the desert, one of the reasons, and they put me in 29 Palms, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, like everywhere where there's just dirt. So when I got out, I looked at the country, and it was either Maine or here, but Maine is Siberia. It's too close to Matt. So I moved to Washington. Um, Snowbirding, like buying a small multifamily in another state and being there sometimes, maybe to get out of here in the worst of the winter. But I might try to do other countries. I have 16 units. I'm probably going to add some because the income snowball keeps building up money, right? You have to do something with it. It is losing value in the bank. But I don't know. I might sell a house, pay off some debt, find a different thing to invest. I don't know that I have the net worth yet mentally to diversify into assets I don't understand, because anything I do in stocks, real estate, or no, a business or crypto or anything is going to be at risk to lose it all because I haven't educated myself on it. I haven't. But this is a term I'm using. I've mastered my my version of real estate. Like, I'm not doing short-term rentals. I'm not doing commercial lending. I'm not doing storage. I'm not doing all of these things that I could be doing. I'm doing mine. Small multifamily, long-term rentals, some house hacking mixed in. Like, these are the things I've mastered, which made me have whatever I want to do with life. I can do it. I don't have to work again ever. Um, Middle of a Tuesday, I can have my water from my magic flask, and I don't have to worry about working tomorrow because every night is Friday night. But as the money grows, I might look into something else. But I'm probably just going to, because I know it, buy another small multifamily, put long-term lease tenants in place, rinse and repeat. I don't have a growth goal. I had a growth goal to get to where I was 4 years ago. I wanted financial independence. Um, After that, my goal is to now. It seems like some people I'm going to have to drag kicking and screaming, but I want you to get from where you're at to where I'm at, to where you can go. I want to be lumberjack landlord. I want 100 to 200 units. I'm going to recycle capital. I'm going to do all my own work. I'm going to do whatever he's doing, right? That you have the option. If you get to where I'm at, you can then do that, or be Michael Zuber, or be whatever, or you could be me, which is the laziest human being. Life goals. That should be the t-shirt. That's a great question, Nick. I appreciate that, Nicholas. I appreciate that. Cool name. Definitely want you at my funeral. Yes, just don't tell your family I'm coming. I'll just show up. I'll sit on the side. I got the napkin white things. I pretend I'm crying or whatever. I'll probably be laughing so hard I'm crying, but I just sit on the side and be like, "Do they know that guy?" Yeah, Derek. I agree with Kyle. Thank you. Appreciate it. Neo Collective. Oh my God, that is too funny. You should upload one of those weddings sometimes. Yes, I definitely will. William. Howdy. There's no deals in Tampa anymore. How do you feel about turnkey companies out of state? I don't know how I feel about the declarative statement. And then here's something that I learned from, I love this from Four Rooms. The less a man makes declarative statements, the less apt we are to look foolish in retrospect. There are no deals in Tampa is a declarative statement. I don't know that I would say that anywhere. I think it might be harder to find deals. You might need to look at different asset classes. You might need to look at things like days on market to figure out who can take an offer that actually makes sense. I don't myself want to use turnkey properties out of state unless I know somebody who's done it and get an actual in-person review from it. It's kind of like Millennial Mike invested at a distance by meeting Mark Matsky from Matsky Finance and using his knowledge and his connections to invest out of state. I don't want to invest in like the Bay Area or in San Diego or in Seattle, right? But draw a circle around that metropolitan area. And the further out you get, at some point, there's going to be an equilibrium that happens where prices, rates, and rents balance out to where you can find good deals. It might be like Michael Zuber, 2.5 hours away, right? To me, that's better than out of state. And a lot of people will say, like, I can't invest. I live in California. There's a huge difference between Santa Monica and Rosamond, right? Kern County, LA County. Very different, right? Both in California, about 2.5 hours apart from each other. Julie, 1031 your house into a multiplex or two. It is an option. The problem is, and I had this conversation, there's a really good video I did where I like pulled off the ninja move of the decade. I grew a YouTube channel. So one of the reasons I can get on a channel like Michael Zuber's and have Michael Zuber and Matt the Lumberjack Landlord both sit there, both pros, show them my complete portfolio. Here's the cash flow, here's the units, here's the structure, like they're kind of familiar with it. Here's my cash reserves, here's what I've built up to invest, here's my income. What do you think I should do? And like they gave some options, sell the house, pay off the debt, sell the house, buy some more, keep the house. And Matt made a really good point of that is a house that is paid off with a dialed in tenant. House was done in 2000, or the roof was done in 2018. All of the interior has been, new floors and everything, but there's a Section 8 tenant paying $2,200 a month, paid off property. I've talked to that tenant maybe 3 times in as many years, right? It's just never have to deal with it. There's a benefit to keeping that house. There is let me know if anybody wants to know the super shallow part of me, the reason why I'm keeping the house too. I don't want to share the shallow unless you want to know. But so yeah, if I sold it, I could buy some more units. I would probably increase the cash flow, but I would increase the number of tenants to manage. And then part of this is being the lazy investor, and that could be more cash flow from less tenants. Sure. That is a good suggestion, though, Julie. Tom, you have those humongous ant mounds. I spent some time in Florida, Fort Lewis, and was amazed at those crazy ant hills. There are, but they don't kill you, right? They're not trying to eat you. We have bear. There are bear here. They're probably bobcats or something like that. Probably wolves. There's a ton of deer. There's deer everywhere. Deer basically are giant rats. In case you didn't know that, they eat everything. Buy flowers. A friend of mine that has a turnover on her duplex bought like $50 or $60 worth of flowers to do some curb appeal on the exterior. Fixed it up, looked great. Deer went through, trashed it, left one little sad Charlie Brown looking bulb sitting there. It's like, oh yeah, it's great to have deer around, isn't it? Some water. We have hit the 3-hour mark, so I understand if you're on the East Coast and you need to take off. It's getting late, and my voice tends to put people to sleep. I understand. Actually, she said bored to tears. So that's not sleep, right? Derek, I want to know the shallow part. I bought the house while married to be the forever house, not an investor. White picket fence, raise the kids, retire, whatever. Figure, buy it when you're like 30, pay it off by the time you're 60, have a paid off house to retire in. Normal American dream. Go through divorce. Because I'm really good at keeping custody of kids, been through 2 divorces, kept the kids both times. And I'm good at keeping the house. So I kept the house in a divorce. And so the little shallow part of my brain is like, I won one thing. Well, 2 things. Because she got my 1970 cherry red, fully rebuilt Mustang, and all of my kids grew up hearing over and over, I would have traded any one of you for that, which is not true. That's why I don't sell. Little tiny part of spiteful me is like, I keep the house. I don't know. I should sell it. Kyle, you're keeping the house because of something with your divorce. Yeah, I must have said it before. It's the water. Sometimes the water doesn't let me remember what I said. Thank you. Nicholas, your content and the way you try to help people has inspired me. Awesome. I'm 38 years old, high school teacher willing to walk away from pension to be financially free like you did from the golden handcuffs. That is awesome. I have my brother and my sister-in-law are both teachers. He is an ag mechanics teacher. She is an ag science teacher. I saw them, they live far away. So I saw them, I think it was this year, might have been the end of last year, beginning of this year. They're both teachers, both doing great. And we were just having a regular conversation and we were talking about retirement. And I was like, yeah, I probably could have, in 2018, but I probably won't. Because I used to say, until I retired a month ago, because I want to say the truth, but I used to say, I don't think I'm going to retire early. I'm probably never even going to retire late because I really like my job, right? But time freedom beat it out. If you haven't seen my video, I did a video on the slides the other day called, warning, don't buy rentals. And that was the warning. You might walk away from a job you actually like because time freedom is so much better than even working a job you love. But my brother and his spouse, who are working towards pensions, were talking absolutely normal. Like, if everything goes good, and they've been like literally high school, college, graduate, teacher, since. So he's coming up on 29 years of being a teacher. If everything goes right, that was the sentence, I can retire at 65. So his plan, now maybe he loves being a teacher. Great. So he'll have 43 years pretty much of teaching. And what sucks is, let's say he woke up one day and decided he didn't want to do it anymore. He has done nothing but work for that pension to let him walk away. Maybe the pension at this point could be, but some of them have an age requirement. Your age and the number of years you work have to equal a certain amount. So maybe he would even hit that. Yeah, that's a position that's a position I tried to be in twice. Tried it with military, tried it with law enforcement. Like, I'm going to work for the pension until I decided create my own pension. Daniel, what part of California are you from? Up until ninth grade, I was in a little town called Rosamond, California. In ninth grade, I moved to Palmdale, California. And so I lived with my mom until ninth grade. Then went and lived with my dad for about a year. And then moved out on my own and lived in Palmdale and rented a room from friends. And so from 15 on was on my own. Palmdale. That's where I would say, if you had a high school to go to, that's where I finished that. I'm kind of like Matt the Lumberjack Landlord, though. I really wasn't heavy into education. I had straight A's up until like the ninth grade when I moved out of Rosemont. But in high school, I had like a 1.1 GPA all the way through because I was just bored working two jobs, living on my own. And I was like, I just have to go to school because I want to join the Marines, and you have to have a diploma to do that. I didn't know about their get it while you're in program or whatever that thing is. So I just didn't have high school to go through. I was literally like a teaching assistant for most of it. And then I had whatever classes were required. I probably should have dropped out like Matt did. But Tony, howdy. Some might call it shallow. Some of us might call it justice, right? PJ, justice, nice. Thank you. Tom, that's why I call this Dion's financial bedtime stories. Well, as long as you're home and going to sleep, Tom, and not out driving, and I'll put you to sleep while you're driving. Cool name. The less a man makes declarative statements, the less we are to look foolish in retrospect. Been listening for 10 minutes and out pops this gem. So yeah, the actual direct quote is, the less a man makes declarative statements, the less apt he is to look foolish in retrospect. It's from a movie called Four Rooms with Tim Roth. Amazing quote. Actually, I think Quentin Tarantino makes the quote. Tim Roth calls it a genius. But if I took it out of that movie and I've used it for a lot of things. Tom, where's Chester tonight? He always has great questions and thoughtful content to add. Yeah, no kidding. He's not here tonight. Maybe I torqued him. It's not the same as torque. Torquing is different. PJ, what do you feel is the best way to save money for someone who is bad at saving? The concept that you should Google and watch several videos on is pay yourself first. One of the reasons why the 401k system is so successful in getting any amount of money at all is because it happens without your real conscious awareness. You set up the automatic payments. So figure out what your living expenses are, figure out a way that you can make another account and set up with your W-2. Say, look, hey, every paycheck I want 50, 100, 100, whatever you can get that's not in your living expenses to go into that account out of your paycheck. Separate it to where you have two different payments coming in that you don't see. And then that thing will just magically grow. Automate it. Make it to where it's not relying on willpower or a decision or your memory. It is just happening automatically. That's what I recommend to somebody who's not good at it. Make a, gamify the system. There was a kind of, um, I can't believe I'm going to use this as a reference. Absolutely never take anything that I say about relationships as a relationship advice because I've never had a successful one. So, no. But when I was with somebody and I wanted to buy something, I would make an agreement that if I buy this, the same amount of money either gets spent on the spouse or partner, or the same amount of money gets put in savings. So Josh Singh from Minority Mindset says, if you can't afford 5 of something, you can't afford to buy 1 of something. My strategy was, if I can buy this thing and put the amount of money that it costs into savings, then I would do it. And then when I had the spouse, it was, if I want to spend this much on me, it's going to get this much spent on her. So 3 people just went, wait, Dion straight? But yeah, that was my strategy. Automate it, take out willpower, take out memory, take out awareness, and make the savings as simple as possible. Pay yourself first. It's the 3 words I want you to Google, watch a couple YouTube videos on it. I don't know that I've made one. I've mentioned it in a lot of my earlier videos. I probably should just make one on how that works. But there you go. Derek, PJ, I use the Acorns app to round up debit purchases and saves for me. So you automate it, take out awareness, take out that. That's awesome. Stephen, howdy. I'm taking Social Security now. I started at 62. Men in my family generally have short life expectancies. Hopefully, I'll beat the odds by exercise. I hope you do too. And my poor friend Dan, he's retiring in, I think, 16 days, 17 days. He retires on the 19th, so whenever that is now. But the 19th is his last day. And for like 2 years, not a year since he announced it, a year straight. Every time we go, Dan, how many days left? He'll say, oh, I have 80, I have 40, whatever. Everybody I know goes, I hope you make it. People can be mean. PJ, my issue is I always spend it on tools or projects. Figure out a way to monetize your projects. Con, howdy. Great video as always. Still sitting back waiting for that deal since February. A bit disappointed I have not found a good deal. Yeah, I'm still saving myself looking for that next good deal. I'm excited about finding one because, watching days on market pile up might make it easier to find it. But every day that you haven't found it, you're adding to the savings. So your down payment, closing costs, immediate repairs, and reserves are getting bigger, opening up more options. Eventually, you might save enough to where you can do all cash, refinance later, do a BRRRR method. Like, you have more and more options as you save. So definitely not a bad thing. And I'm probably going to wrap it up after this next question from Larry. Howdy. I'd suggest that you have at least 3 successful relationships. Being a single dad and raising 3 kids is definitely 3 successes. Yeah, I don't want to take credit for them being amazing. I think it skipped a generation on some things. My kids turned out great. So my people chooser is broken, but my kids are great. Nick, does all of your rental income go into one bank account or 16 different ones? So here is the really quick Cliff Notes version to break down what my business looks like. 16 rental units, 7 properties, but 16 units. So mostly small multifamily, 1 single family house. 1 checking account, 1 saving account, 1 credit card that I use for cash back. I pay it off daily, so I never carry a balance. 1 Excel spreadsheet with 1 tab for income and 1 tab for expenses. I send the Excel spreadsheet to the CPA and I sleep like a baby. That's the totality of the business. I do have the book that I talked about earlier that breaks down my business. Each property gets 10 pages in here to record it, but that's more of like organization than how I run the business. A long list of reasons why I don't have an LLC, and we can make this as complex or as simple as you want. So some people will do a checking account for every thing. Then you have to make sure that there's enough to cover the mortgage, and you're sometimes waiting for rent to come in to cover it. And I just have all of it in 1 checking account, all of it in 1 saving account, and padded enough to where all of the mortgages can hit all at once, and there's still enough money to where I'm never waiting for a rent check to come in to pay a mortgage. Automate everything as possible so that I think I have 2 bills, 1 stupid water company that I have to pay that won't set it up for automated. But the town is like, it's so small, it's not even a town, it's a little water company. And I forget what the other bill is, but even like property taxes on the paid off property, that's automated. Takeout. I can't make a mistake. I can't forget something as much as possible. Don, thanks as always. Appreciate your time. Fantastic evening. Thank you all very much. I appreciate everybody who hung out. I appreciate the likes. It, what is really cool is if you see somebody ask a question on Facebook or in BiggerPockets or anywhere where I have a video that answers the question, like should you have an LLC? How much in reserves? How do you screen tenants? How do you set rents? And you remember watching one of my videos and you could just link that video to answer their question. That's the biggest compliment you can give to any content creator. That would be awesome. Until my next video, thanks for coming to my Dion Talk.